Order, welcome, and full day ahead.
It'll just take a minute.
So first order of business, new councillor business, Councillor Rogers, item 2.1.
Yes, Your Worship. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to bring our attention to the Grandview School. Our 2015 financial plan indicated a cost, and it was a deferred cost, of $900,000 for the demolition of the Grandview School. The city was gifted the 5.87 acres of land and building for $1 from the school district. The building has been well used by user groups that are now in the Calvin Crook building. The cost of demolition at $900,000 would mean that the corporation is embarking on a financial loss to the citizens and the shareholders of Dawson Creek after the demolition is completed. The value of the land will be worth significantly less than the cost of the demolition. Other recently purchased comparable land north of town between 8th Street and 17th Streets were purchased for roughly around $30,000 an acre. Even if it was valued, even if that land was valued unrealistically at $100,000 an acre, it would still be worth approximately $587,000. We would never recoup our demolition costs for that property. The corporation and the stakeholders have invested in a water storage facility and a sewer trunk line, which makes this land more available for residential development in a form depending on zoning. From a business point of view, we have some land that requires spending $900,000 on and would be worth less than half of what we put into it after the demolition. It's more cost effective to get rid of the land and the building to a true developer and not a promoter, and let them do the demolishing of the building and develop the property. Then the corporation can start collecting revenue from the development cost charges and property taxes from whatever ends up getting built there. And then let's just keep in mind that the cost to the city for the land and the building was $1. I've had discussion with local developers and builders who are excited about the prospect of developing the property. I will say again that these folks, they're local and they do have a proven track record. In consideration for the opportunity to develop the property, my suggestion would be that a minimum of 10% of the land be dedicated to assisted living and or low-income housing such as BC Housing, BC Native Housing, Dawson Creek Native Housing, Dawson Creek Society for Community Living, Seniors Housing, and I probably missed a few of them, or even just a combination of all of the ones I've just mentioned. Note that there's already a mix of single and multi-family residences bordering the property. I don't really see a problem with the higher density in the correct form, as 95th is a bus route and a main thoroughfare. I believe the traffic would be relatively the same as when the building was used as the school or as the art center. After a discussion, I'm wondering if there would be support for a motion to direct staff to prepare a request for expression of interest from potential developers.
Thank you. Discussion. Councillor Schumann.
Yeah, so right away the 10% jumps out at me as not quite what I had in mind for up there for assisted living, seniors housing, low income. We don't have, well, I don't know that we have much other than that land for that the city owns. And I know that previous discussion by council, we did discuss saving that and developing that possibly with those groups that you spoke of for specific use, like for seniors housing, assisted living, that kind of thing. So the 10% that you throw out there, that's not good enough for me. I would like us to have more than that in that area.
You have a number?
I don't have a number. I don't know this idea that just because you're signing up or you're proposing to sign up some local developer, that it'll be, any better than any other developer is a little bit offensive to me as well. So I don't know. I think that we've got that land. We should hold on to it. We don't have any other land really to develop. We've had conversations in the past trying to get something going with BC Housing, and the properties that we do have downtown have not been to their liking. I think they would rather it was somewhere else, and for me, that's what I would like to see that land used for, not other development.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Javetkov, Councillor Wilbur next.
I can see where this is going to be a huge cost to the city if we don't do something like what you're talking about. So if you're making a motion, I would second it.
I'll make a motion after discussion.
All right. Councillor Wilbur?
Yeah, I actually agree with Councillor Shim that I don't think 10% is enough. I think we have a huge gap in our housing. Councillor McFadden and I did meet with the people from BC Housing at the last UBCM, and so we're waiting for their stats. I haven't received anything. I don't think Councillor McFadden has either on the numbers that they have for our area. So it's more just than those groups. I know that if you have dedicated units for veterans or veterans family, you have access to Veterans Canada Fund. So I agree that regardless of who develops, it needs to be developed to fit the need. And I know there's been talks with Spicker and what they see as a gap. Also, the Dawson Creek Society for Community Living, they have some gaps that they know about. So I think all of those have to be put together before we move forward and look at what can be done there. I think we need to understand what the needs are exactly and who those needs are for, and where we can possibly pool money together, because no one group has enough to develop that property for affordable housing or assisted living. I know moving forward with the health committee and stuff, maybe there's room there also within some sort of development to have a doctor's office or something there. So there's a lot of different resources that we need to look at, and I'm not prepared to just move ahead quickly and not have covered all of the needs that we can. And I think there's more needs than we know, and we need to pool that information.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor McFadden?
Well, I think that's the basic part of what Councillor Rogers is saying. We need to direct this matter to staff and have them look into it. And those are all good ideas, what Councillor Schumann has said and what Councillor Wilbur, and Rogers, they're all good ideas. So I think if you make the motion and we refer it to staff, they'll come back with a report covering all of those possibilities or inevitabilities.
Councillor Barslow, then Councillor Rogers, sorry.
Yeah, I recognise that there's alleged to be a need. I haven't seen the facts yet for affordable housing. I know the work that we did at the Society for Community Living, what we were told and what turned out to be the reality were poles apart. When we were looking at the acquisition of I think it was called the Coos Haven there, remember? But I think the bottom line for me is the fact that we should kick this over to let the private sector come forward and recognise that there is interest by council in affordable housing, a mixture of housing. And the bottom line for me is I'd like to see the place demolished, and that we not be stuck with the $900,000 bill. We can ill afford that given all the other needs we have. It seems to be emerging all the time, so I would I'd like to see the 10% figure dropped and just cert with an emphasis on affordable housing, and just let's see what comes forward.
Thank you. Councillor Rogers?
Your Worship, would you like to sum up the debate?
Well, so I guess just from when we talked about this last summer, when we brought it forward to council and asked that we get the proposed demolition of both the old Calvin Crook Center demolished, as well as the swimming pool included in the 2015 budget. And the conversation was exactly around this point. The value of the property, the value is going to be in the dirt in the coming years for us, and what's going to be the most appropriate and best use for the future of our community as we look at that, both in terms of affordable housing for those that may need it, seniors. One we haven't talked about, and the one that I worry about and we should engage in, is our school district. Because our current facilities for the schools, although we have the O'Brien sitting empty and some of the others, but is that value in terms of having land available for the school district up in that area going to be potentially a need with all the development that's going on in the north end of our town? So those are, to me, all the components around why we felt we needed to, and wanted to get it into this year's budget, get an anticipated cost of demolishing the properties, and then look to presenting and providing some input into the direction for the future use of the land. So I'm good with that. I like the idea of us exploring the options in terms of what are the best possible uses for us in the future of it, and engaging all of those various sectors, because 20 years ago it was our land bank was our biggest issue, and in the coming years it's probably going to be where are we going to have the availability for development for some of these needs in our community in the future, and I don't know what that is. So I'd like to have that information before I kind of move forward with it. So yeah. Go ahead.
I just like to make a couple of comments. Number one, we're not, the city of Dawson Creek, we're not very good developers. I believe that developing land like that.
We're the #1 small city in Canada.
Yeah. But I believe that as far as like developing that piece of land or a subdivision, yes, we definitely need to have our input in that process. And regarding when I said local developers, and Councillor Schumann took offense to that, I believe that we need to support our local businesses. And I've had a few of them come up to me and want and express interest in it. So this just gets it out onto the table. From you know, I'm not saying that I don't want to hear it from anybody outside the community or anything like that. I just look at it and go, the land is available, and there's as regarding the schools, I believe in Sunset Ridge and Harvest View, there is land available for the development of a school just a little bit further up the hill from there. But anyways, I just want to get this on the table, so I would move that council direct staff to prepare a request for expressions of interest from developers for the demolition and development of the property at 1100 95th Avenue, with considerations being at least 10% dedicated to assisted living or low income housing.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Javetkov. Discussion? Councillor Schumann?
I'm not going to support that with the 10% in there, so.
That can be changed. This is just getting it on the table.
Then take it off the table. Take the 10% off the table and I'd support it.
Councillor Wilbur?
I agree. If you remove the 10%, I'll support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Parslow?
I'm the same way. I think we should remove the 10%.
Thank you. Can I ask a question through to administration? The issue of assisted living, we would need to have, that brings in Northern Health?
Well, through your worship, the concept behind having request for expression of interest go out is that the marketplace does that research for you and brings you a proposal. So if someone's going to talk to Northern Health, it would be them. The problem you have in the equation is that land is zoned public institutional, and you can't sell that zoning. You can't guarantee anyone that you will zone in keeping with their response. That zoning, you must come to it with an open mind. You must listen to the surrounding neighborhood. And so I'm already concerned about the math. If the math doesn't work for us, how does it work for the marketplace? But maybe they can demolish cheaper or something. I don't know the answer to that. But when you throw the uncertainty into that, which is that the private individual could do all this research, bring you a proposal, and then the zoning they need could fail at a public hearing. That seems to be a pretty onerous request you're making to the marketplace to do a lot of work with a lot of risk, whether there's any payoff. So, but you must make clear in your expression of interest that you are not guaranteeing anything about zoning. It might stay public institutional, in which case, you know, they wouldn't be able to put up residential.
Thank you. Further discussion? Ready for the question?
Should I take the 10% off?
If you want it supported.
Okay. Take the 10% off then. And with regards to the zoning, I'm pretty sure all the developers are aware, because we do have a report that was done by Plant and Associates that we could send out as a package as well, indicating, because it will indicate through that package any hazardous materials that are in the buildings and stuff like that, that we have had done. So we have had an appraisal on the land, so that would be made available to them. I don't know what the legal implications of that would be if they found something more after the development or something like that, but keep in mind, we're just asking for input. That's all we're doing.
Brenda?
If there's an amendment to the motion, we should have the approval of the second
Okay.
as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Schumann?
Yeah, so you take off the 10%, and then how does it read then? That the emphasis or the what we want is
We move that council directs staff to prepare a request for expressions of interest from interested developers for the demolition and development of the property.
So then you're gonna have developers coming in looking at just building residential or multifamily or whatever. Like, I think, feel that we want the emphasis to be on transitional, assisted living, seniors housing, low income, affordable housing, whatever you want to call it. We want, I think, that land to be used for that. And this doesn't say anything. So they're going to come back with, you know, a couple of condo developments or something like that without the emphasis that we would like to see on the other aspects of housing in the community. So you're going to put out an expression of interest, but you're not going to get back what we want to see, because we're not saying that's what we want to see in there.
What is it we want to see?
I just told you what we want to see.
That's what you want to
Well-
see.
So,
I think it's not just me that wants to see that.
so Councillor Parslow?
Well, if you've approved the amendment of the 10%, I would like to make an amendment if the motion as read is on the table. It is, right? That all proposals are to address the need for affordable housing in the community.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Wilbur. Discussion. Discussion on the amendment.
It's open-ended how they address it, but it does put a caveat that we're interested in proposals. Presumably it'll be mixed, because you have to make, you know what I mean? But let's not put any figures, but just foreshadow that we want to see some imaginative ways of addressing the apparent need for affordable housing in the community.
Thank you. Ready for the question on the amendment? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Now on the motion that was amended. Are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Anything further, Councillor Rogers?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilbur, 2.2, and Councillor Schumann in regards to the North Central Local Government Association Convention bid.
I guess I'll start. So I did email out kind of speaking points last night to council. So in 2009, roughly holding the NCLGA AGM was around $102,000. $82,000 of that was expenses that were covered by registration fees, sponsorship, and that left about $20,000 for NCLGA, which is the point of the AGM, that leftover funds goes to the NCLGA. It is really a fundraiser for them. We could add 15% to the cost of 2009, just taking into consideration inflation, but also keeping in mind that that's hosting it exactly as we did before without maybe changing sessions or reducing some costs that way. We would be looking at $35,000 for a convention coordinator. Last time in 2009 it was done by staff, but we no longer have that staff, so we don't have the capability. And then another $5,000 for an online app, which would reduce our costs on printing and many other things, and allow the delegates to have access on their phones, tablets to the agenda and timelines. There are 300 rooms available. They are being held currently until we make a decision, so we have the rooms. The event center is available, and that is held for those dates until we make a decision if we're bidding, or if we are bidding, if we get it. There's catering available that it wasn't available in 2009 at the event center, and as well they have their own curtain and rod system, which had to be rented last time, and that's a huge expense to bring that in from out of town, so that cuts costs. Requests have been made to the mayors of Chetwynd, Pooskoopi, and Tumbler Ridge to co-host the bid, so it would be a South Peace region bid that we would put in. As of Friday, we heard back from Pooskoopi. They are in favor of co-hosting with us. Haven't heard back from Chetwynd and Tumbler Ridge, but just the way our meetings run, and it's just a time thing, but we can, they seemed interested, so that's to me a positive outlook. And I just think that partnering with our other communities and co-hosting, we're pooling our resources, we're pooling our ideas, and we're showcasing other communities that could not host the AGM. They don't have the capability. And the costs of the coordinator, the app, and the expenses would be covered, just like they are this year in Prince George, by delegate and partner registration fees and sponsorship. And if perhaps Councillor Schumann has something to add.
Thank you. Councillor Schumann?
Yeah, so I really love the idea, the concept of doing it as the South Peace Presents NCLGA type of a deal, because those other communities, they just don't have the capacity to ever host the NCLGA. So I see it as an opportunity to work together with the other communities within the South Peace. And for all of the fiscally responsible Conservatives on this council, I would have you think about all of the money that would be saved by not having to travel out of town to attend the NCLGA, hotels, travel, et cetera, et cetera. It would be a cost saving to your councillor budgets with regards to travel costs, and et cetera. So we will save money as far as council goes on expenditures for the NCLGA, and it would give everyone the opportunity who doesn't usually attend these kind of things to gain the information by having it here in the community.
Thank you. Are we making somebody, Councillor Javetka?
So after all of that, what is the cost to the city? Considering the savings and the costs and all that, I lost track there.
It was blinded by their beauty. You weren't paying attention.
I think the point we're making is the costs are covered by delegate registration fees and sponsorship. So NCLGA does have corporate sponsors that participate in their events, and then we would find some local sponsors for speakers, which has not been a problem. One thing that we talked about was talking to Dr. Charles Helms and maybe doing a dinosaur tour out to Tumbler Ridge and having him be one of our speakers. And usually he volunteers his time, so those type things. So I mean, we will cover off our sessions, speakers by sponsorship. There are sponsorship that comes with NCLGA. The rest is basically covered by delegate registration fees. If they bring their spouse, there's a charge for that. If they want to golf, they pay extra to golf. If they want to go on a tour, they're going to pay for that. So those costs are covered by those that are attending.
So if there's no budget item associated with it, I would support it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parslow.
Yeah, and appreciate, first of all, Councillor Wilbur sending her speaking notes out last night. That's good practice if you can do that. It's refreshing to hear that maybe the net of people concerned about fiscal expenditures is widening on council. That's encouraging. Yeah, Councillor Wilbur, in my email to you, I thought, misread it as well, that I thought this was a cost item. I'm not interested in any increased cost items whatsoever. If you're saying it's cost neutral, that's good enough for me, so I will support it.
Thank you. Further discussion?
I just have
Councillor
one
Rogers?
question. How much staff time, I just wanted clarity on how much staff time is gonna be involved?
We don't have the staff to do it. That's why we would have to hire an event coordinator.
So, we're gonna hire an event coordinator, okay. So, what is the benefit of this conference? I understand that it's a benefit for, because we don't have to travel to go see it, but what benefit is it to the citizens of Dawson Creek?
Well, those delegates that are here, the 300 of them, they are going to be eating here, they're going to be shopping here, they're going to be seeing different areas of our region. We are going to have the ability to not only showcase Dawson Creek and have that money here, but we're also going to take them out to Tumbler Ridge and to Chetwynd and Pooskoopie and have them spend some money out there too and see the different regions, and hopefully we can encourage them to come back on their own.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ready for a motion, or are we making a motion?
Making a motion that we make a bid on the NCLGA AGM for 2016.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Schumann. We had the discussion. Any further comments? Councillor Javetkov?
Can we add in there that this will not require any city budget?
Making that by way of a motion, or an amendment. Councillor,
amendment, yeah.
Shelley?
Yeah, through your worship, so for 2016, we'll probably put in a revenue item and an expenditure item, the same amount, so the net effect is zero, but we do have to have the expenditure side on it to authorize the spending of money.
Yep,
That work for you?
that works.
Do you want, so you're making that by way of an amendment, Councillor Javetkov?
Yes.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Parslow. Discussion?
Just to further to that, I mean, there needs to be some cash available, for instance, to hire this coordinator, even though the revenue will cover it, you know what I mean? So, to enable this to
Right.
happen, there needs to be some initial funding which will be offset by revenue. Do you know what I mean?
Right, so if we are awarded the bid, then that is available through the NCLGA sponsorship funding that they have.
Thank you. Ready for the question on the amendment? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. On the motion? Ready for the question? Councillor Parslow?
Nope. I just
Good,
put my hand
sorry.
up to support.
All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillors Wilbur and Schumann.
I have a...
Councillor Parslow?
Business, yeah.
Yep.
Just to update, been 2 meetings with the Historical Society concerning archives. A third is scheduled for March the 11th, working on a set of aspirations and action planning. One of the accomplishments so far is that Encan has already stepped up and provided the computer suite needed for the interactive displays they want to have there. So hats off to Encana again. They always seem to be there to help us, so I appreciate that. The Art Society is pleased about the potential of the art gallery. The last iconic building in Dawson Creek, they refer that to, is going to be taken care of, and I'm really pleased with the work that Duncan's done about a fix that would see a 50-year fix to that building. There's a request, and I'm not in favour of this request if it's costing us any money, but I just want to flag it. I think it's a good request, and maybe staff, through the good relations they have with some of our contractors, the fact that this the elevator part is going to be the foundations refurbished, etc., enables the possibility of the ground floor area being used as a art classroom or an event place. It adds the potential. You may know that there's been some ideas around adding to the art gallery for the point in having what they call the Edna McPhail teaching studio. Whilst some of the cultural endeavours in the community are well looked after at the Calvin Crook Cultural Centre, the visual arts are not. And so the group does have some money, so this isn't give me something more. They're very appreciative of what's been planned already, but they wondered if there's any way some sort of preliminary cost estimate could be obtained for developing that ground floor part as a classroom. So I said I'd raise it at council table, but I just wondered, the cost estimates for the refurbishing of that structure was obtained through a local contractor. Does staff think there's any chance they might just have a look and give a preliminary figure without it costing the city any money? So I'm asking if council would consider directing staff to see if we can get a free estimate of establishing a classroom at the Art Centre in consultation with the curator, Kit Fast.
Thank you. Jim?
We can certainly try.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? So do we need a motion? Do you want a motion on that? Yes? Councillor Parslow moved, seconded. Councillor Wilbur. Discussion? Councillor Schumann?
Councillor Parslow, if you could answer me this. So the classroom would be incorporated into what we already have there?
Yes.
Like where?
Okay. The elevator part of the building has been used for many years as a storage place for wagons and other things that have now been
the
moved
one
to...
with the big door?
Yes, it's been moved to the Mile Zero Park.
Okay.
Also, there's some grain handling stuff, which is also destined to go. So if you clear all that out, the ground floor, which is accessible through that, they see that as being a potential classroom with a lowered ceiling and some insulation and power. So they just wanted to know, because they do have some funds they think that could do it, but they wondered if the goodwill that exists between the city and some of our contractors, we could get a free estimate of what it might cost.
Thank you.
So you know the part of the building.
I was thinking in the part where the gallery is right now. I was thinking where in there, but
No,
that
sorry,
whole other area is where we store all our Christmas decorations and everything in there, right?
That's right.
Okay, thanks.
Just on the same topic, by the way, the seniors art group is flourished at O'Brien because of the accessibility. Council leases a space there, and it's now moved from just 1 day a week to 2 days a week. So that's very positive.
Councillor Rogers?
So they're just talking about taking a storage facility and turning it into a classroom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Dveka?
There was talk over the past number of years about actually developing the elevator as a demonstration thing for tourists to go through and see how an elevator works. Is that all gone by the wayside, or?
I don't have any recollection of those discussions. All I can is, I'm not deflecting your question, but in discussions at the Mile Zero Park Society, the demonstration of the grain, some aspects of grain handling, I don't know which, are planned, and some of the stuff that from that building is destined to go to the Mile Zero Park. I don't know if we're talking about the same sort of things, but I know in the planning for the Mile Zero Park, the grain handling aspect and displays is planned as part of its vision for the next 5 years. But
Thanks.
not the use of this facility. No.
Thank you. You ready for the question on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. So we're passed into our delegation time at 9 o'clock. So our first delegation this morning is Jason Fair, Jessica Culp, and I hope Aubrey Fair are in attendance regarding our New Year's baby for 2015. Come on, please. Come on. Good morning. Congratulations.
That's so quiet, baby.
A week, too? We really just want to see the baby.
Yeah. Once a year, we get to see a baby.
She was allowed to bring you.
So on behalf of the residents of the city of Dawson Creek, it's my pleasure to present the plaque. And that's how much we appreciate you guys coming in today and giving us a chance to recognize and celebrate the birth of the newest resident to Dawson Creek in 2015. And so on behalf of City Council and the residents, congratulations. Thank you. Thank you.
She's like, bright lights.
And we don't have to ask how old that baby is either.
No, it'll be easy to remember.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. Thanks so much
Thank
for
you
bringing
very
it in
much.
this morning.
Yes,
Thanks.
take care.
Thank you.
Oh, do you want this little cover thing?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Very content.
Our next delegation, item 6.2, is Arden Smith, Sherry Gunn, Sandy Ash, and Rosalind Guest from the South Peace Community Resources Society for an attendance regarding our International Women's Day proclamation. Good morning. Good morning. How are you guys? Welcome. For me? Oh. So it's my pleasure this morning to read the proclamation. Whereas March 8, 2015 is International Women's Day, the highlight of International Women's Week. International Women's Week 2015 begins with spring tea on Saturday, March 7, 2015. Each year at this time, Canadians celebrate progress towards equality for women and their full participation, reflect on current challenges, and consider future steps in achieving equality for all women in all aspects of their lives. And whereas the Government of Canada's theme for 2015 is Strong Women, Strong World. Women's equality has made positive gains, but the world is still unequal. International Women's Day celebrates the social, political, and economic achievements of women while focusing world attention on areas requiring further action. This theme encourages advocacy for women's equality and vigilance, inspiring positive change. And whereas International Women's Day is a global day celebrating the achievements of women's past, present, and future, this special day provides an opportunity to celebrate the progress made to advance equality for women and to assess the challenges that remain. Now, therefore, I do hereby proclaim March 8, 2015 as International Women's Day in Dawson Creek.
Hey.
There you go. Congratulations.
Tell me about the
Thank you
barn.
for coming in this morning. Thank you.
She's going to tell us? Okay.
So the floor is yours. Please say a few
Bread
words.
and Roses has become the theme of International Women's Day since the days of the suffragettes movement. And so we've brought bread and roses for the women. This event is a very positive focused event
Thank you.
for us. So the tea and
Thank you.
tasties. And we'll have some speakers at the event and some entertainment. Local gal will be singing and there will be some dancers. So I hope you can all come, bring your special women in your lives, and we'll celebrate International Women's Day.
Again, can you just confirm the date and the location?
It is actually on the 7th,
The 7th?
Saturday, at the Sedation Hall,
Okay.
and it's at 2 o'clock.
This Saturday at 2 o'clock at the Sedation Hall for everybody? Great. Thanks very much for coming in this morning. Next up, we have Kevin Schubert and Gina Curran from BC Transit, in attendance regarding future developments. And this is a result of, I think, good morning. Good morning, nice to see you guys. Last fall, I think we had a request that we wanted to get an update from BC Transit in terms of a bit of an overview and an update on services in the city of Dawson Creek. And then I think in the last month, we had that request for potentially a route change, and so that was a good opportunity for us to be able to ask Transit to come this morning and give us an update. So good morning, welcome, nice to see you guys.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the invite. It's always nice to have the opportunity to talk and address any questions that are outstanding. Part of what we wanted to do today was provide a high-level overview of BC Transit and the role, and also talk a little bit about Dawson Creek, but also from the perspective of supporting you as elected officials and the decisions you have to make throughout the year in your term. Our department, in essence, has two key functions. And just allow myself to. My name is Kevin Schubert. I'm the Director of Regional Transit Systems, and I'm joined here by Gina Curran, who's the Senior Manager for the region. And our department is primarily the role of stakeholder management, but also service delivery. So a big part of our function is ensuring the effective two-way communication through your staff and with yourselves as elected officials. From an operating standpoint, we're accountable for the health of your system, communicating that and making sure that the right information is coming to you to make those effective decisions. So that's a large part of what we'd like to talk to today. You have this information in front of you if I carry forward. Yeah. So BC Transit is the provincial agency or authority responsible. Thank you.
Is the stick not in?
Oh, it's not out. Okay, we'll get three of us working on.
That's okay if the information's in front.
Well, we just have to pull that stick out, put it in, and then it will.
This feels like our IT department.
There we go.
Super, yeah.
I just had to be able to see it.
Thank you. So BC Transit is the provincial authority responsible for the planning and funding and operation of transit throughout the province. And of course, that's outside the TransLink area of Greater Vancouver. We have a fleet of over 1,000 buses throughout the province. They're distributed in 81 different systems. And the key thing that's unique in the BC Transit model is we work through 58 different local governing partners. And we contract out virtually all of our services in the province through private and not-for-profit operating companies. What makes BC Transit, the model we practice in BC, unique to anywhere else in North America is the shared services model. So BC Transit as authority is the central administration from finance, from planning, scheduling, etc. We do this contract management, and those are sort of part of the efficiencies that make the shared services model unique. The other key component of it is how we partner with local governments to provide that service. So the local government, and this is important to understand, the local government in essence is the one that approves service levels and routing based on recommendations that are provided from BC Transit. So in essence, the service priorities are determined from the local government, and it's our role to turn those priorities into actual service on the road. One of the other key aspects that makes BC Transit unique and the model work is we are actually the operators of the service in Victoria. And what that does is allows us to give an operational knowledge that provides a level of contract oversight with a knowledge that is challenged if you're in others, whether you're in state or provincial authorities. From a municipal perspective, it requires a certain level of staffing to actually understand that oversight. So it's one of the key pieces that actually makes the model work. I should emphasize too, there's two other key pieces from the local government perspective. other than the providing service, of course, you're setting the fares. So the fare structure is something that the local government looks at, and we're always happy to provide fare reviews and recommendations to support you in that. And of course, the local tax subsidy is coming from local government. So as I mentioned, this is a very unique model, and what it has contributed to is performance measures that outperform any other province in Canada. These are measures how we look at how we're performing as an agency against other CUTA measures, which is the Canadian Urban Transit Association, and that looks to like systems in our comparisons. So you can see on just, I put out three measures here, but to demonstrate that we're outperforming any of our peers in that category. And this was also something that was found. BC Transit went through an independent review in 2012, and that was the conclusion of the independent review panel. And part of that becomes from, again, that shared services model that allows for bulk purchasing, a contracting strategy that allows us to look at the province and region so we can gain economies of scale, administrative efficiencies, and the pooling of expertise as well. Just on a real high level, the Dawson Creek system, we're almost 35 years old now, 9,000 service hours annual. I'll give you a little bit of a scope of that later, but in comparison to peer systems, that would be anywhere from about 9,000 to 12,000 based on similar per capita systems in the province. We're carrying about 125,000 passengers annually, and that looks at 14 trips per service hour. So every hour a bus is on the road, you're looking at about 14 passengers on average. There's 3 routes in your system. We have 3 vehicles required at peak, and there's 4 vehicles within your actual system. The operations, sorry, did you have a question?
Just a question on that. Does that mean that we've got 4 rides per bus per hour?
No, it's per service hour per bus. So if you have 3 buses on the road, you have 45 passengers.
Okay.
Diversified Transit is who we contract services out through. Their contract still extends for another 2 years. And the facility used to provide service here is right now leased by BC Transit. And one of the things that's noted here by the regional manager is that we're at capacity in that facility. So if we were looking at long-term expansion, it's something that we're very well aware of, that we need to address and come up with a strategy from that standpoint. I've highlighted here Dawson Creek basically has only what we call conventional transit, so that's fixed routes, scheduled services. There's 2 other types of services that are provided throughout the province that are not provided locally right now. Which custom transit is the most common. That's your handy dart service for registered users with some form of mobility issue. The other service that's provided is called paratransit. Paratransit is simply a blend of the 2. It's where we have a bit of a mix. You'll typically find that in rural areas where it's a regional trip. Health Connections is something that we provide in many of the communities where it allows for deviations from what the actual fixed route or schedule. It's a little more loose in its scheduling itself. One of the things I want to focus on is the span of service right now. There's Monday to Friday from 6:40 to 8 p.m., 6:40 a.m. to 8 p.m., and on Saturdays 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I thought it was actually a little shorter on that on the Saturday. But that's the span of service that you're offering in your community right now, and I want to just point that out just a little later on and why that's important. The funding behind the service, again, is shared between the local government and the province. This is what really makes BC Transit unique, or I should say the province of BC unique to others, in that the province actually shares in the cost of operating and capital, versus the provinces where typically you'd find grants towards capital only. And so what that does is has made transit very feasible for smaller communities that otherwise wouldn't see service. I did a small rural transit presentation about 3 or 4 years ago at UBCM, and one of the interesting statistics that came out is among the communities that fit the category of small rural transit, in Canada only 20% of those communities actually have transit. In BC it's 100%. And that's largely because the province participates in operating costs and supports what really, when we're in operating, we're constantly under inflationary pressure, so it makes a big difference. Another key piece to know, and this is very important to be mindful as an elected official, is revenue goes 100% to offset the local share. So that means every dollar more we can think of from revenue is an offset to the local tax subsidy. So we want to constantly be as efficiently delivering service as we can, but one of the things we want to look at is revenue. So it's important to know that there are guiding documents in which elected officials sort of can be used as a guideline for service initiatives and expansion requests, and they exist. We're not starting from scratch here. There's a long history, as you know. We're almost 35 years in here with Dawson, but we typically will do a service review every 5 years for a community this size, which sets the goals and targets for the next 5 years. So there was one done in 2006, which recommended an expansion to a third route, increase some service hours. Subsequently, in 2011, another service review was conducted following a, and pardon my my language there in the first bullet and the second topic, but this followed a 27% service reduction in 2011, I believe in April. And what happened is we had a fair response by passengers here. So another service review was conducted in partnership with the community. We did a lot of public consultations and returned in February 2012 to 3 routes and back to a service level of about 9,000 hours again. You'll note here, I'm still talking about guiding documents, but we're on the third section here, which is effective decisions. And one of the things that I can suggest as a key focus as an elected official, transit is a very difficult, being a black and white person myself, it was difficult to come into transit because everything's gray in the decision making. So I don't envy being in your position to make difficult decisions often when it comes to transit. But these are the tools that really can support you in making those decisions. So we have service priorities. So that's basically saying, what's the span of service that's important for your community? We want to have late night service. Do we want to focus on commuter service? Or is coverage more important than the actual ridership itself? And coverage is meaning accessibility to the actual transit routes. Versus ridership, which might be a very limited coverage, but high frequency is on a small number of routes. These are really important pieces for you to sort of use as your guidelines. Are we actually serving the community in the way we want to see it? Transit at the end of the day is as important as it is to you in your community. So this is a key piece. The second piece to that I want to emphasize is on the performance measurements. So this is the tool to say, well, what for the investment we make as both the provincial and local tax dollars, what do we want to see as a return? What's important to the community that we want to see? Are we serving seniors? Are we serving students? Do we want a minimum ridership per service hour? As I emphasized earlier there, we're at about 14 rides per hour. So what's important to you to know that that investment is being effectively and efficiently done? But these are the key tools that will allow you, when decisions or proposals come forward, to say how are they actually impacting those performance measures. There's 4 key things we will do throughout the year to communicate key information via staff and at the request of council, and I've highlighted them here. So we conclude every year with the annual performance summary, which would come out typically in May or June, and that's telling you how the previous year, how we did both financially from a ridership standpoint, makes a comparison year over year, and as much as we can to like systems. And I'm always honestly concerned when we make comparison to other systems, because every system has its own story and uniqueness, so it's very difficult to compare numbers. But it's what we try to do to support you in where you're at as a transit system. And much of that can now guide the next one, which we'll communicate, is the Transit Improvement Program. And so that would talk to any initiatives that were proposed and endorsed by council in a previous service review for expansions to service, etc. So the Transit Improvement Program, in essence, is gaining alignment with the local governing partner on those initiatives before we go to the province with a request for service, for expansion funding. One of the major initiatives we rolled out in line with the service review that was conducted in 2012 was a 3-year forecast. So we've gone through great lengths to do 3 things within this, which is not only communicate what we project your upcoming operating agreement budget to look like, but we also forecast what the following 2 years are, so there, we mitigate the surprises that might come from capital investments, operating expenditures that we might be forecasting. Of course, the most difficult one is being fuel. But we also do that at large requests from the local government. We now do that in a calendar year format. Of course, we operate on a fiscal year that ends with March 31st. But so we do now do that in a calendar year format. And where you've agreed in the summer months to the Transit Improvement Program, we provide an initiative forecast that says, should we secure funding from the province, this would be something you would look to have in your long-term budgeting. And finally, that's all concluded in an operating agreement, which is done annually and talks to your exact budgeting and service specifications, the actual hours on the road. This is something we've added this year to benefit yourselves as elected officials on the frequently asked questions you might receive. And quite often these lead to misperceptions that get out of hand, but they're very important. And what I've done at the back of this presentation is given you some of the details behind each of these questions and things that you might want to know, and I'm happy to address any questions you have with regards to that. But these are the most common ones we'll hear from any council around the province. So I hope that helps answer any questions, but again, if you've read them and you have any further questions, please feel free to ask me at the end if you wish. We also have several opportunities to communicate with yourselves or via staff. We have an annual workshop that I'd like to officially extend an invite to you to. This year it's in Harrison Hot Springs at the end of April. And increasingly we've had more and more elected officials attending it and finding benefit and understanding a little bit more the challenges and opportunities behind transit. So that, as I mentioned, end of April. Our senior managers are at all the local government association meetings, and it's a great opportunity to ask any questions specific to your system, and I encourage you to set up a meeting at those if you'd like to ask any of those questions. We also attend UBCM, so that's another opportunity to extend an invite. And as we are doing today, we always extend the invite or the opportunity for us to be invited to do council board presentations. So the typical ones are the BC Transit orientation that we're doing right now, which usually follows the recent municipal elections, but also anything to do with your annual performance summaries and following service reviews or workshops. We're happy to do that where we can have more open dialogue and talk about your system challenges and opportunities. And of course, budgets. I know every council likes their budget, so that's something we're always happy to talk about and the details behind there. And of course, our department formed about 5 years ago at the request of local governments so that we're a single point of contact for any of those questions. So our regional transit manager is constantly in touch with your staff. So if you have questions, they can be directed through staff, and we're happy to support you on that. This is particularly important, which is if you're asking yourself how can you support transit, there's several key things outlined here, which is there's a lot of times we find we get involved, we're invited or sometimes not even invited into the equation of key decisions made locally that may impact either developments or local initiatives, and we're always happy to support you. We have a planning department, scheduling department, fleet department, safety and training that are all available and key resources to support you in those decision making, and all can be done via your transit manager. We have a development referral program where if you want to include transit as part of a future initiative, we're happy to review it and say how transit might be better served more efficiently in reviewing those plans. Quite often we'll get into situations where it's an afterthought and transit can't be efficiently provided to that community because we can't do either an easy circular route or we're in a dead-end street. So just something, again, to extend. And with that, I will say thank you, but open the door to any questions you might have. Be happy to help. Thank you. So any questions for Council?
Go ahead.
Councilor Parslow?
Is there I keep hearing about the Lethbridge bus system, but I may have the city wrong. One of my concerns is the ridership in this community. I believe we are the second lowest ridership in BC, with Fort St. John being the lowest. Doesn't matter. We have low ridership. And I understand that in Lethbridge or some other Alberta city, essentially the buses are not running around on set routes all the time. You can phone in and order a bus, and you'll be told when that bus will be there. In other words, you don't just dispatch a bus to the order, but you inform people when the next bus is. It seems to me we have very, you had that graphic up there where you had people riding in buses.
Yeah.
And if you look at our buses, we're oversupplied. If you follow that diagram. And we do spend a lot of money on this for a few people. Accessibility is very important, I think, to everyone. So we're not sort of saying, no, we want to deny it. Some of us don't want to deny accessibility, but surely there has to be some better way of doing things. I mean, I have followed buses. A lot of people talk to me about our transit system. What a waste of not in the quality, right? I never hear any complaints about staff or cleanliness of buses or anything like that. It's just that surely there's a better way of doing things. Accessibility is important, but why do we have all these sort of buses nearly empty? And I have followed buses just to see, because as you say, sometimes there's some spots that get a lot of rides, and then when you see them the next time, if you don't follow the route exactly, and it's not because I have any concerns, I'm just curious about the ridership patterns.
So there's
Anyway, have you heard a system such as I tried to just roughly outline, whereby you don't have buses, maybe at peak times you have set schedules, but they collect sort of an order and then they send out a bus?
Well, first I'll say I could talk to you for the next 10 hours about that whole subject. I come from a private background. I joined BC Transit 5 years ago, and it's one of the things I've looked at a lot. And I've challenged it from the same point of view, because the first thing I came into is elected officials saying the same thing, and from a logical standpoint, you'd make the same observation. There's several challenges. So first, let me just talk to Lethbridge. Lethbridge is far from a comparison. I mean, you're talking a community of about 80 to 100,000. Yeah. So do they have pockets of on-demand service? Yes, they do. To my knowledge, they do. John King, who's there, is an ex-BC Transit employee, and so I know a little bit through that. We have examples of systems like that in the province where there are on-demand pockets. On-demand traditionally is terribly inefficient. It's a way of providing support to a region that might not otherwise have transit. That doesn't mean there's not other opportunities, and we continuously look at it. The biggest challenge any community, and your community faces pretty much the same challenge of any 10 to 15,000, I might even include the 20,000 populations in BC, which is your peak demand is really what's driving your fleet requirement. And typically that fleet demand, that peak demand is driven by the school service, whether it be the colleges or high schools, etc. And so we went through this very, very, very detailed experiment in the Kootenay boundary in Nelson and in Cranbrook, by the way, Very similar situations, and the challenge was if you reduced your, so we have a couple options. You can reduce the vehicle size, in which case you risk leaving people behind at key times, and that's the more rural the community, the more that becomes a bit of a risk, particularly when you're talking about youth, where you don't have heavy frequencies. That becomes a concern. The alternative is we could go to lower, smaller buses and put more of them on the road, and the capital equation usually doesn't work out where it becomes very close, but you're offset in your operational net efficiency of a smaller bus, which, by the way, we've introduced smaller vehicles from what you had prior to, which are operated at a much more efficient level than the prior ones. But you don't get enough of that operational net savings to make that benefit. So this is the balancing act you're constantly playing. And at the end of the day, if you want to find efficiencies, it comes down to prioritizing who you want to serve in your community. That's really the game. But if you're talking about who is in your community and being served right now, that's the challenge you have, is meeting peak. The rest of the day, you're absolutely right. You would see buses of varying ridership from 0 to whatever that number be, which will give you, the perception of an empty bus. It's those peak loads where you might be in the position of standees. That's what the challenge we face.
So I'm afraid I'm going to have to cut it off. We've got a number of delegations, and we got to get through. So I'm going to have to ask. So I appreciate you guys coming this morning and giving us an update. And thank you. And we'll certainly be following it through. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
I've left some materials here. There's a BC Transit Advantage printout, some information about the workshop, and Dawson Creek was featured in our Connections newsletter for the bus shelter that we opened at the co-op and the light tour.
Oh, thank you.
So,
thanks so
my
much.
business card, should you
And
have
your
any
cards
questions
there, I
or
can phone you
concerns.
later.
Sure,
Yeah, thanks.
Next up, we have item 6.4. We have Perry Boudreau from RBS Bulk Systems in attendance regarding the dangerous good route designation.
What a girl.
Thanks for
She's
the
hired.
cup.
Brings us coffee.
Nobody saw it.
So,
Thanks for the cup.
Are you guys in town?
do we have our next?
High maintenance, I have tea.
I'll try and give you a call later.
What's that?
Kind of busy all day today. Thanks a lot.
RBS Bulk Systems.
Yes.
Good morning.
Welcome.
There you go. Well, thank you very much for having us again. Really do appreciate your time. I've put together a presentation this time just to go over some of the concerns from a trucking perspective we have, and some possible solutions to some of the issues that you're facing in Dawson Creek with the transportation of dangerous goods going through town. I'm aware that this is a provincial issue, but certainly I feel that it's important for council to have a perspective from our side as well as to some of the challenges that we face with the current TDG route that the province has in place. So today, let's see if I'm working this right. Who's in this? Just that one right there, isn't it?
I know.
Try taking the stick on
Try just reinserting the stick and see if it recognizes this one.
What I got here, Perry, it's awesome.
Yeah, that has to go back in. Should. Yeah, there we go.
There we are. Thank you very much.
Guess we may have to do that again next
Yes.
time.
Today, I'm going to just talk about the current TDG route that's in place, some of the concerns and the hazards of this route, the impact that it could have on Dawson Creek by keeping the current route that's in place, some of our possible solutions, and then the conclusion. And before I go any further, I'd like to introduce Rebecca Chorney is my health, safety, security, and environmental advisor, and she's located right in Dawson Creek at the new terminal that we have here as well. Current dangerous good route right now, as you can see, goes on the outer limits of Dawson Creek. For the most part, is not too bad. The one area of contention, though, that we have is with Rolla Road, which most of you are probably quite familiar with.
They snake pits.
Yes, the snake pit. Some of the concerns and the hazards on this particular road is that there's two 10% grades that are on this road. The potential for spin outs, and that's trucks that get stuck on this road. Skidding and sliding during adverse weather conditions is extremely high. Happens on numerous occasions out there. There are no proper pullouts for drivers to chain up. When there's adverse weather conditions, of course, truck drivers need to chain up in order to gain traction. On this particular road, there are no pullouts so that the drivers can chain up safely to get up and down those roads. It's not recommended that truckers put chains on prior to any hills they climb, because they do significant damage to the highways and the roadways that they travel on, and of course the trucks. The potential for flat tires or tire blowouts increases substantially. Again, this particular area of road, when we do have significant snowfall here, does have inadequate plowing and sanding. They do get out there when they can. However, I've found throughout the province that there is a lack of resources in terms of getting out there as soon as reasonably applicable to get these done, and trucks and cars do travel 24/7 and continue to travel through adverse weather conditions when they get out there, making the road extremely slippery. It's a narrow roadway that the trucks have to maneuver down. You cannot get two semi-trucks coming down that road safely at the same time. They end up, they're inches apart when they're passing each other coming down that hill. The other problem that you run into with the snake pit or Rolla Road is the fact that trucks have to, when they're coming around corners, in particular when they're coming around this a right-hand corner, have to cross the center line in order for their trailers to make it around. There's quite a grade. There's no shoulders on that road, and a drop down. When those trailers drop a wheel, the whole truck goes. If the whole truck goes, then you've got a whole load going down there, and a potential for catastrophic up to and including fatalities occurring. Again, it's just another angle of the road coming from the other way, and as you can see, very soft shoulders, very few shoulders, and it's actually quite winding for those trucks to get around. And with that 10% grade, makes it extremely difficult to maneuver. And in the trucking world, what you'll have happen is trucks will tend to pick up a little bit of speed in order to try to get up to the other side, which again increases risks for incidents to occur on this particular hill. There's a railroad crossing at the top of the South Hill, and by law, any dangerous goods truck has to stop at this particular stop sign. From what I understand, and I didn't get a confirmation from CN, is that this railroad crossing is no longer used. However, we still need to stop. During the summertime and when weather isn't too bad, it's not too much an issue, but in the wintertime when trucks have to stop in order to get traction and get up the rest of the hill, there's a lot of difficulty that occurs, and in most cases trucks will spin out or get stuck, and again, tow trucks will have to be called up in order to get them up the rest of the way. This has occurred to our company in particular quite a few times. at that hill. And again, we don't want them running that railroad crossing and not coming to a stop. However, again, I've been in contact with CN to find out what they're going to do with this particular crossing, or even take that stop sign out. And
It is out.
It's really funny that you say that CN says that this isn't operable, because I'm sitting with the MP the other day on the plane, and he had a conversation with CN, and they're like, absolutely, this line is operable.
interesting. Well, they won't give me a firm answer
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
on that particular one. However, with the stop sign being out, dangerous goods are still, with the crossbucks there, are still required to stop at that railroad crossing, because it's an uncontrolled railroad.
And it's paved over, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it paved over everything?
Well, I can tell you, over the winter, you can see that there had not been a train on there, just based on the snow and everything
The
else.
snowbanks.
Yeah, coming across.
We know there's no trains there.
Again, this stretch of road has a history of accident involving both passenger and commercial vehicles, including fatalities, injuries, and tank truck rollovers. Again, what we were able to pull up, we know last year where there was a fatality with a motorcycle, so not only truck trankers, but certainly in the last 5 to 10 years, there have been up to 33 incidents on this particular road that include trucks going into the ditch, trucks rolling over with various products inside them, making it very treacherous. A lot of drivers, you'll get some drivers won't even come and work this area if they have to go around that particular dangerous good routes. They're just afraid to go down that particular stretch of road. Some of the potential impacts, again, there's a serious risk of motor vehicle injuries or incidents, fatalities, due to the design of the road that they have there. Again, by forcing the vehicles hauling TDG products to use the current TDG route, it'll raise the number of vehicles on that particular road, which again, by association, will see a rise in the number of expected MVAs that you can expect to see there. Dangerous goods could spill into the creek. There's a creek there and onto the landscape. Which is not very good at all. Local businesses will be affected, and again, I just touch on these things. Truck drivers do stay at the hotels there. They do go to convenience stores. They do go to the gas stations. And so from a monetary standpoint, certainly there will be some impact, and there are a lot of trucks that come through Dawson Creek. There are a few select gas stations near the dangerous good routes, but the two main gas stations are in town, which are Petro Pass and Shell. Truck drivers do go there to fill up with gas, and they also, when they run out of hours on their logbooks, it's a place for them to park and stay the night, go shower, do those types of things. As well as they have to take 2 hours off during the day. They will go there, park, and in some cases go in, eat lunch in town, go to a restaurant and do those types of things as well, coming through the town. Some of the suggested solutions that we've talked about, again, one of the things that we will be doing as a company to be proactive, and we've done this in Williams Lake and we've done this in Merritt already, where we have dangerous goods go right through the middle of their towns, is that we've met up with their fire department and we've went over the types of products that we haul through the town, the types of things that we can do together collectively to respond to an incident as quickly as we possibly can, and so that they're prepared and we're prepared and the communication lines are open, and it's worked very well. We did have a rollover of emulsion, which is very, very dangerous in Williams Lake, that we were able to get to quickly, contain, and get recovered without incident. And then we had the RCMP, the fire department, city officials, and ourselves, and the shipper that were all involved within a matter of minutes of this rollover happening and responding. First responders there within 10-15 minutes of it occurring and having it contained. So certainly as a company, RBS will be contacting the Dawson Creek Fire Department to have discussions with them and start initiating the same type of communication with them. And I would suggest that any other trucking companies that haul dangerous goods might want to be a part of that as well. In Williams Lake, we meet up with their council members and their administrative staff once a year, and we go over a sort of a modified emergency response plan where the RCMP and all the stakeholders are involved, and we sit there for a half day and we discuss what we would do if an incident occurs. So again, that everybody's on the same page and there's no surprises if something should happen. A reduction in speed limits for trucks traveling through Dawson Creek in terms of TDG would not be a bad thing. Again, every kilometer that we slow these trucks down means that we reduce the risk of or the potential of any serious impacts if an incident should occur out there. Again, the current routing that the trucks take through town, it's important that, particularly in the wintertime, that we maintain them because not maintaining them just adds to the risk of an event occurring. And a couple of issues have come up from talking with several truck drivers, and they put 15th Avenue and 17th Avenue, it's actually 15th Street and 17th Street on the Alaskan Highway. The light phases there go from red to yellow to automatically to green. There is no delay, so if a truck's coming down there and it's a green light, it goes from yellow to red in like 1.5 seconds. There's no time to react. Truck may be going, and there's no way to indicate whether this is a stale green light. Neither of these lights are not. They don't have the walk light or the hand up to indicate that be prepared to stop. In most cases in jurisdiction, they usually have between a 4 to 6 second delay between the yellow and the red light, which allows cars to clear the intersection. Would be something to look at. On several occasions, we have got some concerns from our drivers on the condition of the intersections being too icy and sand not being down there quickly enough, and trucks sliding through that intersection. So timely sanding of the intersection would be prudent in order to reduce the chance of an incident occurring within the city of Dawson Creek. If the TDG route that's currently proposed is enforced and they want trucks to go around there, I would suggest that the province would need to build a new bridge in order to keep it safe to go right across the snake pit and eliminate it, because it's just not designed for trucks to go through there. And one I didn't put up there, but again, another very costly one would be to eliminate the traffic circles in Dawson Creek and fill in the ditches. That would eliminate trucks going around, shifting of the product, or dropping of a wheel, which occurred with us last January when one of our guys came around the corner and he dropped his wheel into the ditch, and the trailer went over on its side without any spill or anything else. We were able to recover it, but I believe we did knock out power to about 3,400 businesses and residents, one during payroll, which didn't go over very well from what I understand. And I can understand that from over there. So would be another possible solutions. However, again, that would mean changing infrastructure, which takes a fair amount of time. And again, for information only, from our perspective, the trucking perspective, certainly RBS is planning to be very proactive with our trucks coming through Dawson Creek, and we will be in contact with the pertinent parties to ensure that we have communication going back and forth. So thank you very much, and we really do appreciate your time and
Thanks, Perry.
consideration on this.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Very quickly, does anybody have a quick question? Councilor Dvetkov?
This is a pretty comprehensive report. Have you presented to our MLA, Mike Bernier, highways? And is the Trucking Association involved with your efforts?
Trucking Association in BC is not involved. Of course, I approached because we're an Alberta company, the AMTA, but no, I haven't approached the MLA yet, which will be our next level that we go up to give this presentation, and I will be in contact with the BC Trucking Association in order to do that. As a matter of fact, I will need to be in contact because we've just opened up a new terminal here in Dawson Creek, and I need to start becoming involved with the association here a fair amount.
Thank you. And the other one is, there's the Northern BC Truckers Association located right here in Dawson Creek that represents the entire Northeast.
Oh, which is perfect, which will be great. Certainly we'll be in contact with them as well.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, we gotta
Yeah.
continue to move through. Next item, item 6.5, we have Mr. Dwayne Stewart from Western Canadian Properties Group in attendance regarding Ridgeview Townhome Development Permit application. Good morning.
Good morning, Your Worship. How are you today?
Good, thanks.
And councillors and staff, good morning.
Morning.
I'm here today to give an update on the work that we're doing with Western Canadian Properties Group at the Harvest View. I'm hopeful that I can use the projector if that's possible. We're getting ready for our 2015 construction season, and as you know, we're the first company really working through the official community plan. And this is just a sample of one of the pages from the plan, where you see the issue that I want to talk about today, which is the detention pond in the southwest corner of the property there. This detention pond was designed at the OCP level because it's the natural point of water flow and water collection for this area. There's a hill that breaks left to right, and you'll see the second detention pond on the right-hand side, which will be required to collect the balance of the space. This is a design from Wedler Engineering, which indicates the size of the pond itself. You'll notice on the bottom that there are certain pipes that lead into the pond, and then pipes leading out of the pond, again at 89th Avenue. We've been working with Trent Lindbergh and his team, who currently own that property. We did come up with consultation with staff and with Mr. Lindbergh's people. We came up with a proposal that resulted in no money from the city and no money from Mr. Lindbergh in order to develop that pond. In order to give Mr. Lindbergh some value, we had offered to do about $300,000 worth of connections to his property, providing with hydrotel, sewer, etc. to the property in exchange for allowing us to build the community pond. Unfortunately, Mr. Lindbergh and his team declined to accept that offer, and it is now off the table. The issue that we have is that we need to continue to proceed. This council has asked that the development permit for Ridgeview, which is before staff, be held and not be processed until such time as the detention pond issue is resolved. I'm here today to council to ask for the lifting of that development permit hold, and I'll explain to you how we propose to both achieve the community plan and achieve development in 2015. This drawing that you have before you here indicates the area of our property that's affected by two ponds. You'll see one on the top left corner, which is currently temporary and designed to be removed at the time of the ultimate detention pond, and a second pond you'll now see just to the right of the Lindbergh property in the southwest corner of our property, which we also propose to be temporary. This is a detailed description of the pond. It is about a half acre in size. And directly south of this pond is Lepke Park. You'll see here a more detailed representation of both the development that we're proposing and the significant infrastructure works that we are building on behalf of the city of Dawson Creek in order to prepare our lot. I would note to you that the cost of the infrastructure that you see on this paper here exceeds the value of the land that we'll be creating as a result of this work. We're in a position where we're working at a loss for a few years while we get enough infrastructure in place to release land that we can actually build profitably. But that's part of our business plan, and we understand that. But what we can't have is a further delay. So I've been working with Kevin Henderson and his team to come up with a solution that allows us to proceed, but still doesn't leave the development pockmarked with a number of different ponds. What you see to the south here is you'll see the same pipes that you saw in the original drawing connecting to 88th Avenue, and what we're proposing is that this pond be temporary, that the pipes required in the ground on the 90th Avenue right-of-way be sized and designed in such a way that they're permanently useful for the large permanent community pond, and that all of the infrastructure work that's required off-site for the pond to go on Mr. Lindbergh's land be conducted by us this year, and that we tie in a temporary pond to it, really leaving behind digging the hole. At some point, when Mr. Lindbergh develops or when other developments happen in the area, the hole can be dug for the detention pond and the actual system completed. The reality is that at this time, the large detention pond isn't required. This pond is required in order to develop the balance of our property, but we'll still take another 3 to 5 years to finish even maximizing that particular pond. The other pond that's required is many years out before it's fully necessary in its needs. This is an example of what the detention pond might look like when it's full. I'll note that it's normally a dry pond. It would be full only during a storm situation. What we're proposing is that in order to have a firm understanding of how this space would be repaired or reclaimed, we propose that we sell it to the city for $1 and that we provide the city with a bond to allow a new park space connected to the balance of the trail system and other park areas in the region, and that it be converted into a park in its future condition. Right now, Lepke Park has only a southern access, which you may be familiar with, and there is no contemplated northern access to Lepke Park as part of the OCP. We're proposing that this temporary pond be used ultimately as a park and a northern access to Lepke Park. We believe that the road, which is designed to be a dead end with an access lane south, can have, we've shown just a few parking stalls, but you could have as many stalls as you like. There's enough space for play area, certainly green space, and then a convenient access to Lepke Park, giving local folks, especially the folks of this new area, real access to that park. Because right now you'd have to drive some distance to get to the southern access, and there's currently not really contemplated in this plan. The park area that's contemplated crosses the forestry area to the southwest. So we believe this is a good solution. We will provide the city with a bond equal to the cost of reclaiming the land and putting the park in, so that at some point in the future you could actually convert it to a park without spending any city money to do so. The second issue I'd like to discuss today is this memorandum from Wedler. The design that the city has in its bylaw in order to produce the dead-end street. You'll see the bell-shaped dead end that we've proposed, and I'll talk about that in a moment. This is what the city is actually requiring in their bylaw. We note several problems with it. The first is that it would require us to work on the Lindbergh land, which we can't do. We don't have authorization for that. It would also take up a significant portion of the future parkland. That's an overlay of what the park and the cul-de-sac would look like if it was built to its full size. So we've gone to the fire department, who are our principal concern, to ensure that their vehicles would in fact be able to make a small three-point turn, which I note is required even in a cul-de-sac. In the cul-de-sac situation, a fire truck still has to make a three-point turn, and it cannot fully rotate in that end cap. So the fire department has said that this could work, and the city staff are not able to approve that because it's contrary to the bylaw, so it is in fact a variance that would be requesting. These are the two solutions that we see in order to allow the development to continue for Ridgeview, and we request that we be allowed to proceed with this direction in order to get Ridgeview underway this year, and the actual development permit for Ridgeview itself be allowed to move forward as it normally would. This staff has had no issues with the development permit that we provided, and we have no rezoning requests or any density requests or anything of that nature associated with the development. I'm hopeful that you'll ask staff to produce a report that you can then review and discuss.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
I'll go first.
Councilor Rogers?
Do you want to go first?
Okay, this retention pond's a pain in my butt. I still can't believe right from the start that this retention pond didn't get done before development was actually started. I don't think that all of the avenues are exhausted yet regarding Trent Lindbergh, because I made a phone call to him this morning. I know that I talked to you on Saturday and I said I hadn't talked to him. I talked to him this morning and he said, how come nobody's ever asked me if I'd be interested in developing the retention pond and taking care of the fees that go with that? I said to him, I have no idea why. So I would just like to ask staff, or anybody, how much are the fees from development that would be, because you'd be looking at recouping fees. How much would the fees be per lot or whatever? I don't know how that works.
We had never looked to recoup any money from the city. We had anticipated that latecomers' fees would be charged to other developers as part of the normal process of putting in infrastructure that other developers would use that we installed. So that was part of the business plan for the larger pond. The part that's not part of the business plan, and the part that we have a challenge with, is being asked to buy a $1.25 million property for the purpose of building a community piece of infrastructure. We note that the city, its stormwater detention system is not large enough to handle the flows that are proposed from the development, and that's why the pond is required in the first place. It's a reasonable concern. We anticipated to build it from the get-go, but we've not been able to come to an agreement with Mr. Lindbergh to do so. And we've been working on it for almost a year now, quite diligently with staff, and council has asked us to do so, and we've done that several times. We've asked council to expropriate the land. They've declined to do so. We're just trying to find a solution so that we can move forward. We don't feel that it's reasonable for the development to be held back when there is a technically feasible solution, both in the short term and the long term.
Okay,
Thank you.
I don't think that it's reasonable that, well, let me say it another way. Would you be interested in letting Trent Lindbergh build the retention pond and pay him fees?
100%. However it gets solved, we're completely happy to have it solved. We put forward a number of solutions. Whatever that solution is, we're happy to make it happen.
Yeah,
So-
because, sorry, I'm not,
Well, I'm just going to say that administration should be involved in providing us with that technical aspect around who's developing what for our infrastructure.
I was gonna ask for that when I'm in a minute.
Good.
Would that be under mayor's sorry, Your
Yeah, it's, well, it's coming back under mayor's
Under-
business. There's
that
no
would come
decision
back
going to be
under
made
mayor's
here.
Business, not under delegation,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah,
just.
there was just one other question I had is, there are developers that are upstream, like Mr. Campy, for instance, I believe. The last I had heard was they were all excited because we finally completed our residential development stuff, and they needed direction, and they were getting ready, they're gearing up, getting ready to go. So you building a temporary retention pond does not even allow him to develop. So that in order to keep everything moving forward there, we have to have in my opinion, we have to get the retention pond sorted out so that the other people that are upstream can start their development as well.
Thank you. Thank you. So they'll come back to under mayor's business? Thank you. So do you need to take a break?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll take a 5-minute recess, and then item 6.6, we have Wendy Davies, branch manager from the British Columbia Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, and Air Navy, in regards to presentation this morning on cat bylaw presentation. Good morning.
Good morning.
Was it a slideshow too? Okay. I'm sending my glasses.
Use your mouse, Charlie.
Yeah.
My writing's about this big on my screen.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to start off by pointing out that the proposed bylaw recommendations on the table right now will not require any additional funding from the City of Dawson Creek. We are the officers that enforce animal-related bylaws for the city, and we are simply asking for regulations to be put in place that will allow us to do our jobs more efficiently, to reduce wasted time, a great deal of wasted time that currently occurs, reduce high expenses that have previously fallen on the BCS-BCA, and more importantly, protect the residents and property owners of the City of Dawson Creek. So I've been with the BCS-BCA, local BCS-BCA, for 6 years. During that time, I have enforced animal bylaws and overseen the enforcement of animal bylaws.
It doesn't like you there.
We're doing this again.
Which attachment are we on? The first one? or-
First one.
The bottom one.
The last one.
yay. Wendy, you made you read all that? You know that.
Did I? You're welcome. We're ready? Okay. So it is with 6 years' experience that I can. Just there. Just there. Oh. But I can tell you that cats are the greatest domestic animal concern currently faced by the City of Dawson Creek. Cat bylaws will provide us a long-term, sustainable solution to overcome the challenges that are associated with cat overpopulation within the city limits. Intact cats are our primary concern here. They cause most of our problems. Cat-related complaints to us are the second most common complaint coming in to officers right now, second only to dogs at large. But as a result of unregulated and irresponsible cat guardianship, frustrated Dawson Creek residents receive no bylaw support to protect their private property, damage to their property, and manage noise disturbances in their communities. The regulations in place will not cost us more time spent. The regulations to be put in place will actually reduce the amount of time we spend right now on cat-related complaints. Sorry, my apologies there. We spend a large amount of time trying to appease, I just feel like I've missed something here, but okay, I'll continue on. Trying to appease customer complaints. I feel like there's a slide missing.
Yeah, you double click which one.
Sorry.
There you go.
Okay. All right, thank you. I knew I messed something. So currently there are no requirements for cat owners. In the last 6 years, I have received, because I know right now we're looking at chicken bylaws as well. So the last 6 years as an animal control officer, I've received 0 complaints on chickens in the city of Dawson Creek. I do understand that there is a complaint on the table, and because of that, I agree that regulations be put in place. And I think that we can all agree that bylaw regulations should be put in place for any domestic animal that impacts public comfort and causes damage to public or private property. Currently, cats cause more damage to private property in the city than any other domestic animal. So I've included some of our most common complaints affecting our citizens. Noise complaints, of course, we've all had those cats outside our window at night fighting breeding intact cats. Damage to gardens, lawns, and flower beds. There's some people that spend a great deal of time and love their gardens and properties. Garbage disturbance from hungry cats just trying to find enough food to eat to stay alive. Intact and homeless cats will burrow under your decks and homes to just find shelter and have their babies. And then, of course, our most common complaint, or most serious complaint, I believe, is the high pheromone content of urine from intact cats. It's almost impossible to remove that from porous materials such as wood siding and wood decking. And I'd like to share with you a true animal control story that has come in the last year. I'm going to call this person Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith called us because neighborhood cats are coming into his property and causing damage to his property, thousands of dollars worth of damage. They had damaged his fifth wheel, his deck, his siding, and this person could not leave his window open because the cats were spraying through his window, had damaged all the wood trim inside of his window, and actually wrecked a TV that was by his window. Without bylaws in place, there's absolutely nothing we can do to help Mr. Smith. The reality is people like Mr. Smith often end up trapping these cats and taking them somewhere to abandon them, just in a desperate attempt to save their very own property. The problem with that is it's actually against the law to trap and abandon a cat somewhere. So if Mr. Smith is caught doing this, he can be criminally charged under the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. In fact, we have a case pending right now with our Special Provincial Constable on a person who did just that. The bottom line is without bylaws in place to help protect these people, we're actually forcing our residents to take criminal action and harm helpless animals without giving them any options. So the time spent on these cases will actually be reduced by having regulations put in place. Right now we spend a large amount of time trying to help people like Mr. Smith. How can we not try to help him? We went to his property no less than 5 times. We spent an entire afternoon handing out flyers in his neighborhood, begging residents to keep their cats inside, to try to do anything to help him. In the end, these residents end up still angry because we are not protecting them from the domestic animals. With these bylaws in place, we're already doing this work. So we're already helping the Mr. Smiths out there. We're not asking that we're going to change anything right now. We're already doing this work and spending a lot of time on it. In the last 5 years, the South Peace BC SPCA has helped 1,323 dogs from the city of Dawson Creek. And let's keep in mind here that we have an animal control officer out there picking up stray dogs. In the same period of time, we've helped 1,068 cats because we're already helping these people. But with cat regulations in place, it will greatly reduce the amount of wasted time that we spend by clearly defining cat owner responsibilities. Did I? Yeah. Sorry. So what does cat owner responsibility bylaw look like? All we're looking at here is registration. The registration is the key to improving our cat overpopulation. So our cats must be registered, just like dogs. There will be a limit placed on cats per household, just like we do for dogs. The intact cat owners will be responsible for the high fees the fees that reflect the extremely high cost and time spent investigating these cat problems. Our animal service officers may now trap and impound cats based on our registration rules, just like dogs. And the pound keeper will then assume ownership of any unregistered or unclaimed cats after the legal stray holder is concluded, just like dogs. So, I mean, we've already been doing this work. What does the cost look like? In the last 5 years, the average cost of care for a cat at the BC SPCA, this is provincial stats, is $784. A question came up earlier, and I'd like to point out the average cost of care for a dog is actually $485. And that is because dogs spend a lot less time in shelters. People are redeeming their dogs. Cats end up sitting there for a long period of time, costing us more money. So based on $784 per cat, it has cost the BC SPCA over $837,000 in the last 5 years without bylaws. Without bylaws in place, that fee falls on the BC SPCA. So we need a solution, and I'm not talking about a Band-Aid fix here, I'm talking about solutions, and that's why I'm incredibly excited to announce the pending partnership between the City of Dawson Creek and local veterinarians. Our cat registration fees, if you own an intact cat within the City of Dawson Creek, sorry, you know what, I double-clicked again, I believe. Oh, this is missing, okay, this is missing a slide. Anyways, we'll continue on. So the cat registration fees, if you own an intact cat, will be $200. A collar and tag will be provided to you. However, that registration certificate can be redeemed at a participating local veterinarian to have that cat spay-neutered and tattooed within that year. If you do so, your next year's fee would be $5. We can't force people to spay and neuter their cats. However, by offering them solutions, if this person chooses to redeem and spay and neuter their cat, they're part of the solution, part of solving the problem. If they choose not to spay and neuter, that $200 will go towards helping support that $800,000 bill. Registration fee for a spay and neuter cat without tattoo or microchip will be $50. Again, collar and tag provided. Again, that certificate may be redeemed to get a microchip for that cat. If that cat is now microchipped and spay neutered, your fee $5 a year. The idea is to put the responsibility on the intact cat owners. This bylaw will encourage responsible cat ownership. By offering spay and neuter and permanent ID solutions for cats, the city will create a long-term sustainable solution for cat overpopulations and all of the reducing public nuisances. Intact cats are the primary concern for public disturbances.
Wendy, you talk about ID cats, so my cats all have tattoos in their ears, and so I don't have to go get them microchipped.
No, if they have tattoos, that would be, tattoos and microchips are what we're looking for. Spay and neutered cats with tattoos or microchips.
Any permanent form of ID would be acceptable for that, as long as they're spayed and neutered and have a permanent form of ID, they're $5 a year.
Now, if you have spayed neutered cats with ID, like I do, and I don't let them outside, do I have to still get them registered?
Yes, it would be the same as a dog. Yeah.
I mean, I have to let the dog out.
So, again, this is, complaint-based, just like all of our bylaws.
So what's your estimate of the cat population in Dawson Creek?
I would estimate that there's more cats in the city of Dawson Creek than there are dogs. I can't really give you that number, though, because we don't right now.
What's the dog population?
I don't have a number.
You have
so
no
I-
idea of the
I'll-
estimate?
I'll
No.
have to review. It'll be based on our licensing, so I'll have to review.
So, related to the reason I'm asking that, how do you see, where will people go to register their cats, pay their $200 to the BCSPCA
Yes.
offices?
Yeah, to the pound keeper, yeah. Yeah, the BCSPC.
And if they don't, what's the consequence?
So the consequence, it'll be just like dog registration. They would receive a warning that they need to require. Yep. Yep. So that's what happens with a dog. Right now, you'll receive a warning, usually giving somebody 7 days to obtain a license for their dog. There has been cases, we're very reasonable. If a person says, well, I don't get paid until, for 2 weeks, we'll extend that period. We're very reasonable working with our residents. If they fail to get a animal license, just like dogs, the fine is $115. That fine can be administered every single day that person doesn't have a license for that animal. So it's the same for dogs.
Is the fee structured the same as for dogs and cats?
No, it's different for the dogs, and the reason for that is because there is not a dog overpopulation concern in the city of Dawson Creek. We don't have dogs running wild in our streets.
So cats are more?
Cats are more to allow for the spay and neuter and ID initiatives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So why are we looking at animal registration? Why is registration what we're focusing on here? Because enforcement of animal registration significantly improves return to owner rates. It gets the animals out of the shelter. It reduces our average length of stay per animal, therefore reducing our cost of care, which is why dogs' cost of care is less than cats. So 5 years ago, the City of Dawson Creek Animal Control put primary focus on enforcing dog registration within city limits, and the results are very clear. Registration works. It helps us get animals home when they come into the shelter with identification on them. We've also increased cats, though ever so slightly, and that is because our partner veterinarians have agreed to now tattoo every single cat that's being spay or neutered through their clinics, unless an owner declines it. So by even just doing that, we've already started to increase cat redemptions. Registration works. Identification on animals works. So what do we do now? We are going to enforce cat registration as the officers representing the City of Dawson Creek. Our animal service officers will now have the power to impound cats and assist residents like Mr. Smith with cat disturbances. The number of intact cats within city limits will be reduced and eventually eliminate feral cat populations. And we will be placing the cost and responsibilities for these cats where they should be, on cat owners. This is a sustainable solution I'm talking about here. We know that registration will increase spay, neuter, and identification, that it'll reduce or increase redemptions, which will reduce the amount of time animals are spending in the shelter, which will reduce our costs, and ultimately reduce the amount of stray and homeless animals on the streets. I have many stories that I could share with you, like Mr. Smith's, where bylaws could help change our residents' experience with the City of Dawson Creek. Right now, if Mr. Smith were to call us about a dog in his yard, we'd be right there. It looks like very soon, if he were to call us about chickens bothering him next door, sir, we're there to protect you, and bees. But cats, our second most common complaint in city limits, we have nothing to do. If they're coming in causing thousands of dollars in damage to your property, there's nothing we can do to help you. We're forcing these people to take criminal action by offering them no solutions. Yes?
A lot of these issues come up in the middle of the night.
Sure.
How do you respond to, say, a phone call at 2 in the morning when there's cats going crazy in the back alley?
So cats are extremely territorial. They actually stay in one area. They're very defensive of their territories. So if a cat is causing problems in a neighborhood at night, likelihood is that cat is in that neighborhood all the time. So we will set traps up on that person's property. I usually trap usually around 8 o'clock at night when we're looking at trapping cats. So, this is the service I already provide for the City of Dawson Creek.
Councillor McFadden?
Just on a related note, Wendy, you have an AGM coming up March
Yes.
7th, is it, or
9th, March 9th.
And of course, you're looking for volunteers and potential board members, so a large turnout at that meeting. And it's at the...
Super 8 Motel.
Yes.
Yeah, between 7 and 9.
March the 9th, 7 to 9. So anybody interested in helping out could certainly show up.
Yes, certainly all of you know the importance of having a council to represent an area. And right now, most of our council members are coming to term, so we are actually looking for new council members. For CAT bylaws, I'd like to say at this point, after 6 years of representing the city of Dawson Creek, I do not think it's controversial that we're looking at CAT bylaws right now. I think it's controversial that we don't have anything in place right now already to protect our residents. This is private property we're talking about, and these people deserve to be protected. These are domestic animals.
With the new bylaw now, what do you anticipate the addition to the city's budget would have to be?
No addition to the city budget.
No additional cost?
No addition. So
it's empowering us to do what we're already doing. It's giving us the legal framework in place should someone dispute it.
And revenue offsets.
Yes. So, sorry, go ahead.
One other question. In one of the other documents there's a restriction on the number of dogs per household to 2.
Yes.
Is that still going through another hearing, or?
That's in place, but it's a complaint-based process, so as long as no one's complaining, then there's no issue.
It'll be the same process for cats.
Okay, thank you. So thank you. We're going to bring it back through to Mayor's business, and we appreciate you guys giving us the information this morning as always. Thank you.
Thank you for taking time to listen to us.
Item 6.7, we have our next delegation, Jonathan Simmons and Dmitry Iskovich, in attendance regarding the maximum height restrictions in an RM2 and development of the Old Aloha Hotel. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for seeing us, folks.
Yeah, so I'm Jonathan. I'm a local builder and developer. I've been here since I was 6 years old. So thanks for having me. A lot of faces here that are. I'm a local developer. I hope that doesn't come as an offense to anyone, but I'm just kidding. I'm going to introduce Dmitry. He's going to go through the details of our project on the redevelopment of the Aloha Hotel.
Thank you, Jonathan. So we don't have a fancy presentation to show you. We just have a set of plans, and we're going to be very quick. So what we're trying to achieve here is an understanding that there's perhaps a gap in the current zoning bylaws. For example, a house zoning height restriction is 10 meters. Then the next height is medium density to 12 meters. Then it goes to high density of 55 meters. And typically buildings that are considered medium density in other municipalities such as Grand Prairie, they don't have a specific height in place. They say that a 4-story building is a medium density. Other municipalities in the lower mainland claim that 4 to 6 stories is medium density. So what we're trying to do at the Aloha site is build a 4-story building with a pitched roof. We want to build the best building in town. It'll be a rental residences, and we want to provide 9-foot ceilings and nice amenities and finishes. And for us to do so, we're going to require a variance on the height. So currently, the site is zoned for RM2, which is medium density, and we are asking to increase the height of the site through variance. And what we have done as part of our due diligence, talking to Kevin Henderson and others, was we actually went and we spoke to the residents that are neighbors. So if you will, this is our site. So we went west 2 properties and spoke to this lady right next to us. Her name is Tammy, and she's got 2 beautiful kids who are probably going to be out of the house in 3-4 years. Tammy didn't have any concerns other than privacy of people with a balcony looking down onto her backyard, which we have taken back to the drawing board to see what we can do to help her, but any development of such kind will have more density, which means it's going to go up, and physically it's hard for us to restrict eyesight view of her backyard. Then we went and we talked next door to Tammy, to Pat's, who has a cat. And so a very nice one. And so Pat's, they weren't against it at all, being 2 properties removed, and they were actually very excited about seeing something different on the Aloha Motel. And as we were walking the site, we saw that one of the buildings that John boarded up, the door was open, the plywood was off, and it looked like somebody was in there. Everything is stripped. It's an eyesore, we think it is. So basically right now we've submitted the development variance permit into the city, and we understand that the engineering and the building department is fairly busy with other permits as well. And we are requesting for the council to look at this option and consider giving us a variance based on what we just discussed. Maybe I will, whoa, you want to do that? Very quickly show you a plan of what we're proposing. So we're proposing to do a pitched metal roof. This is the blue building. And I will quickly show you an elevation. Very sophisticated here. The elevation of the building right here. Again, we're looking to build an architecturally pleasing building and something that will add to the community. Being in the location that it is, will provide transition between the highway, the mall, to residential park neighborhood. And we have a good wide setback from the next door property to allow for some green space in between. And do you have anything else? That would be it.
Thank you. Councillor Schumann?
So Jonathan, just so you know, I have no problem with local developers. It's the assumption that local developers are better than other developers. That's my earlier comments this morning.
Yeah.
That was what that's about. So what is the actual variance? Like how many more feet higher or whatever?
So we're looking for a 5.5 meter increase. 5.5 meters. And what a typical 40-story building with a pitched roof is between 18 and 20 meters. And again, what we're trying to achieve is elevated first floor so that the snow buildup doesn't get in your door. 9-foot ceilings in between the floor slabs to allow for better sound isolation, so we don't have the noise complaints that we have on some of the existing buildings. And like I said, typically it's between 17 to 20, 18 to 20 meters is what the building's height is.
Thank you. Councillor Javetkov?
I just wondered if you could talk about the parking that you've got planned there.
Most definitely. So currently we're showing, north is up the page. Currently we're showing parking off 110th, and as well parking on the south side facing each other. And so if you actually notice, this is off-street parking. It's not on-street. And there's sufficient space for a car to back out
and turn here
and turn onto 110th. And for parking, the bylaw requires that we provide 1 stall per residence and 15% for visitors, which works out to be, in our case, 67 stalls, and we are proposing to provide 73 stalls additional, because we understand of the recent issues with the secondary suites and so on and so forth, where there's not enough parking. We want to provide more parking than necessary so that it alleviates any on-street parking.
Thank you. So Thank you. We'll bring it back to the table under Mayor's business. Thanks for coming this morning.
Thank you.
Next item, delegation 6.8, we have Chelsea Modishaw, our watershed technician, in regards to a watershed update. Good morning.
Good morning. Your last delegation of the day. Pretty exciting. I'm just gonna let Sabrina pull up the presentation here and then I'll get started. Okay.
Not putting any pressure on Chelsea, but we did mention to her that her predecessor, Reg, sometimes went overtime and that this wasn't the right day for that. So.
I'll see how I go. No. I'm shooting for approximately 12 minutes of presentation and then questions after that. If there be. So let's roll. So my name is Chelsea Modishaw. I'm currently the City of Dawson Creek's watershed technician, and I coordinate the watershed stewardship program. So I'm here today to outline 2014 and plan 2015 activities for our program. So for some of you who aren't as familiar, the Kiskatna watershed is our drinking water source, obviously. The area is approximately 2,800 square kilometers. It spans from Dawson Creek south to around Tumbler Ridge. And the headwaters are located in Bear Hole Lake. So if you see the red little square in the bottom left-hand corner of that map, that's Bear Hole Lake. And then the river flows approximately 170 kilometers to our Eris intake. Within our watershed, we have multiple land uses, including forestry, oil and gas, range activities, wind harvesting, recreational activities, and a few aggregate mining. It is important to note that the Kiskatna is naturally turbid, so it has above average suspended sediment within the river throughout the year. The goals of our program is to support the city's water management decisions, to establish a baseline understanding of the Kiskatna watershed's quality and quantity, to collaborate with local government and stakeholders to adopt better management practices and to increase monitoring, and to conduct community outreach, which encourages water conservation and generates a personal connection to the watershed and the river itself. So in 2014, as many of you know, it was quite a dry year. On the graph on the left, the green line represents the Kiskatna watershed's flows. Up until approximately mid-May, these flows were above the median discharge, which is the line in blue. As mid-May rolled around, we started to see flows go below the median discharge, kind of sent an alarm bell. We increased monitoring and kept our eye on it. The graph to the right again shows the Kiskatna flows in green. The median discharge is the blue line above it. So as we saw summer carrying on throughout 2014, we saw the Kiskatna's flows going towards minimum discharges. We were monitoring this, and so we decided to do a summer release trial, which you can see that arrow pointing. Approximately September 3rd is when we started that release, and then it brought up our water levels for the rest of the year. Level 2 water conservation measures were not enforced as of last year, which is high success because it was such a dry year. So moving to water supply. In 2009, the City of Dawson Creek invested in a control weir structure at Bear Hole Lake, so at the headwaters. This provides live storage, and we can release water from Bear Hole Lake into the Kiskatna River during low flow periods. Fantastic news. We've done multiple releases throughout the last 3 years, and to much success. So if we're releasing water from Bear Hole and it's feeding the river, the question comes to mind, where's that water coming from? So we conducted a water balance study. The first phase was completed in 2014, and it was based on just looking at surface inflows, so looking at streams and precipitation events and how it affects Bear Hole's lake levels. We realized that honestly precipitation was low last year, surface inflows were also quite low. Makes sense. Phase 2 will continue this year. Again, we're going to be monitoring those surface inflows, and we're also going to be expanding our research into looking at groundwater investigations, so looking at the wetland areas around the lake itself. The two most recent release trials that we did, I'll go over. So in November of 2013, we started a release. It went until March of 2014. Approximately 500,000 cubes of water was released during that time. Water level did fluctuate, but we saw not only 500 cubes of water being recharged from the lake, but an additional 11,000 cubes. So we're releasing water and Bear Hole is producing. In 2014, because we had such a dry year and we saw the minimum discharges within the Kiskatna and there were increased monitoring throughout the system, we decided to do a summer release trial. So we released approximately 590,000 cubes of water, or we have released, from September of last year up until January 20th, which is our most recent visit out to Bear Hole. Since that time, 620,000 cubes or so has been recharged into the lake. So again, a surplus of around 30,000 cubes. Water level has fluctuated, but it has not decreased during or since the beginning of the release. So again, going back to that water balance study, what does this mean? Where's the water coming from? The second goal of the release trials was to determine how long it takes water to move from Bear Hole Lake to the Aris Weir. So we installed level loggers and conducted manual flows throughout the summer, and we determined that it takes approximately 8 to 14 days for that water to hit our intake. It's very dependent on weather situations, obviously. Flow monitoring. Like I said, we saw our water levels dropping, or our flows dropping a little bit, so the city took it upon itself to do our own flow monitoring. Currently, all of the government decisions, so Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resources, as well as Oil and Gas Commission, base their water allocation decisions and water conservation measures on the Farmington Hydrometric Station. That's 70 kilometers downstream of the Aris intake. So we're getting reactive-based decisions on things. So we took it upon ourselves again. Let's get out to the weir. I did biweekly flows from July until mid-October to monitor how much water we had. And then we went out upstream and looked at how much water we had upstream of the intake so we know what's coming down the river. That brings me to 2014, 2015. Right now I'm working on developing relationships with different levels of government, specifically FLNRO and the OGC, to increase monitoring upstream and to coordinate our flow monitoring itself. They go out and do flows, I go out and do flows. Let's make sure we're doing them so they're going to work together rather than against each other. The Northeast Water Strategy is a provincially led study that I am currently being a part of, and it's looking at surface water and groundwater within northeastern BC and the current and future risks to that water, both quality and quantity. Again, the Kiskatna has been looked at as needing increased monitoring upstream of our intake. So if we can get partnerships going with the OGC, which I'm working on, I have a meeting this week with Alan Chapman to start discussing the opportunities, or maybe the opportunity of partnership to get that going so we know where our water is standing before it hits Farmington. The Aris Weir. Aris Weir was built in 1993. Since then, there has been minimal maintenance on the weir itself. In 2014, we went out and identified there were multiple deficiencies. We have broken stop logs, our sheet piles are bent, and as you can see, the riprap on the sides, compared to 1993, it's gone, and in between the two-tier structure and downstream, again, it has been removed. It is in our capital budget for a project to begin in late fall of this year to again replace that riprap, do a bit of welding, and make sure that we have that structure. If we were not to have that structure and we had a low flow year, we would not have reservoir backed up and we'd be unable to pump.
It's like washing your car, though. Because we've scheduled this work, we'll have a tremendously wet fall. You wash.
Yeah, I'd be all right with that. So moving from supply to water quality, 2014 we did biannual water and soil quality sampling. All of our results that were returned were below the threshold for aquatic life standards, so meaning we were good to go. We also completed phase 1 of the drinking water quality risk assessment. This looked at different hazard types that could be affecting the watershed and the potential contamination sources that could be resulting, or that those hazards could result from. The sediment, turbidity, protozoa, hydrocarbons, and salts are all different hazards that our water treatment plant has difficulty managing in high levels. So we want to focus on those hazards at first. Bacteria and viruses are secondary. The higher sediment or turbidity load that we have within our river, the more issues we're going to have with that. So great, we've identified that these are hazards, we've identified potential contamination sources, but what does that mean? So in 2015, we're planning on doing an in-house field study. We're going to be going out and auditing 10% of the 350 sites, well 10 to 30%, we'll see how much time we have, going out and looking at those sites and seeing what type of management practices are being done right now and what type of hazards are we actually seeing. Just because they've been identified doesn't mean they're there. So we're hoping to figure that out this year. In the drinking water quality assessment, the intake protection zone was also identified. Some council members may be up to date on this, but I'll go over it a little bit. So it's the red area in this guy here, approximately 550 kilometers squared. If we had a condition where all the streams and the river were full of water without overtopping the banks, and we had contaminants within that area, it would take approximately 4 hours for that contaminant to move to our intake. So this is an area that has high oil and gas development, high agriculture, high range activity. So we want to pay special attention to that area anyways, so it's been identified. In the bottom left corner, each one of these red arrows identifies 2015 or 2016 planned oil and gas developments within our watershed. So moving to community watershed status. Again, should be kind of a familiar term. Currently, 2 different pieces of legislation out there. The first being the Forest Range and Practice Act. Section 41 is put out by the province, Ministry of Environment. It was modified in 2008 to have no size limitation. And this would affect forestry and range practices in regards to water quality, timing, and supply. And I have been working on an application through the Ministry of Environment's Resource Stewardship Division to get this process started. It's a ground-up process that we can hopefully get status for the whole watershed to be protected for forestry and range practices. Second piece of legislation is the Environmental Protection and Management Regulation. There is a size limitation on this of 500 squared kilometers, and it would affect oil and gas practices. So council has submitted a request to Minister Jeekins and Minister Thompson in 2014. It has came back that until the new Water Sustainability Act rolls out in 2016, they're not quite sure how to go forward. But going back to that 500 kilometers squared size limitation, if we look at our intake protection zone, it's around 550 kilometers squared. So there might be an opportunity, instead of having our whole watershed protected, to focus on a specific area, and this might be the area. And hopefully after our risk assessment, we will know if it is or not. Bear Hole Lake, because we have a park permit at Bear Hole Lake, the City of Dawson Creek is required to meet certain park provisions. These include the fish passage assessment, which again is another capital project for this year.
That's the camera.
Yeah, camera or do.
It is, the camera's gonna
Watch the
identify
fish.
fish going by.
And vegetation assessment, dam maintenance and inspection, temperature and dissolved oxygen readings, and then I prepared a report in September and year end that goes to BC parks. Community extension, I'm not going to delve into this too much as I could have did a presentation on this, but there's going to be a report coming up later today that outlines these a bit more in detail. So 2014-2015 trade show we've been involved in, Meets Water Week, 3-day conference it is. This year we'll be replacing watershed signs. Currently they're quite outdated and we want to just get the new signs up with proper contact information. September of last year we conducted a council tour of the intake protection zone and water quality hazards. I'd be happy to do that again if there is interest or expand on the watershed in a different way. And we completed the Dawson Creek Awareness Project, which was a partnership with the Dawson Creek Watershed Society, where we installed 21 signs, 17 being along the Dawson Creek Walking Trail in 2013, and 3 larger signs that are out in the watershed right now, giving spatial awareness and water education. Other community extension, I've been active in the Destination Conservation Program through School District 59, so A Better Planet, One Classroom at a Time is their focus, and it's focused on water this year, which is awesome. I have done 6 school visits this year at different schools within School District 59, and we're looking at supporting World Water Day, Drinking Water Week, BC Rivers Day, and Dawson Creek's first water week, which is scheduled for September. Questions?
Thank you, Chelsea.
Good timing, Chelsea, good timing.
30 seconds over.
30 seconds over? Of which, 12 minutes or?
Most of that was me.
Thanks, Jim.
Any questions? Paul? Sorry, Councillor Javetka?
Years ago, we looked at the source of contamination at the intake. And what was identified was it was the agricultural industry, Upper Cut Bank, and the pasture. I see you didn't mention that there on your report. You focused on the oil and gas industry. Have you considered looking at the results from years ago?
Of course, yeah. So it is identified as one of the hazards under the protozoa or the bacteria or the virus end of things. That's where the kind of the range activity falls into place. So it is going to be part of the risk assessment for this year. And of course, any source water protection documents that have been in the past will be used to help us identify or locate different areas. I've also been in communication with some of the Cattlemen's Association, and so I'm hoping we can get some stewardship projects rolling within the next couple of years on dealing with some of those issues. So
we should also note that the hydrocarbons, which are our treatment system is particularly sensitive to them. Many of those originate in the agricultural industry as well. There isn't the best practice that you would hope for in doing things like changing your oil on farms. So that finds its way into the water as well.
Councillor Javetka?
Just one other question. The focus on having the area declared a community watershed, what different treatment would you expect on the area than what's occurring now through the federal and provincial agencies?
So currently, there is no water quality sampling done through MOE or Ministry of Forest Lands and Natural Resources that's specific to sampling water. So that is something that would be, if we got status, we would get increased monitoring by the Ministry of Environment. And there would be detailed mitigation strategies that would be provided to the city, focused on water quality, supply, timing of flow, and how those different things would be mitigated with any new development, whether it be forest, range, or oil and gas, depending on which pieces of legislation we got. So as a water purveyor, instead of having to request this information and go back and forth in the referral process as we have been in the past few years, they would have to disclose this information to us at the beginning. So it would save a lot of time and it would be increased protection already.
Chelsea, can you tell me the 500,000 cubes or 600,000 cubes of water that was released at Bear Hole Lake over the last couple of years in each of those scenarios? And you talked about how quickly the lake recharges itself. Can you tell me what the estimation of the amount of that release is making it to the Aris pump house?
I would have to look at numbers more specifically to give you how much it's exactly making it, right? But say from November to December, we released, I think it was around 70,000 cubes of water, and we saw a drop of 2 centimeters over the whole lake water level. And then in the next month, we did a release and it increased right back up. So it's not taking 6 months for all the water that we're releasing to recharge. It's recharging within that same time frame.
I guess I was wondering if there's any estimation of how much water that's released is actually getting to the Aris weir?
I'd have to, like I said, I'd have to go back to numbers and see, just because if you're releasing 3,000 cubes a day, what does that mean in water height at the weir, right? Just a few more calculations would need to be done.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks very much. Appreciate you coming in this morning. It's great information. So back to agenda. And we're going to start, we got through did we get through councillors' business? Did everybody address the issues they wanted to? So next item 3.1 is our minutes. Minutes of our regular meeting, moved by Councillor Wilbur, seconded by Councillor Schumann. Were there any errors or omissions in the minutes? Have a motion to accept the minutes. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any business arising out of those minutes? Correspondence, item 5.1, we have a letter from Kelly Ridley, Manager of Legislative Support, City of Port Moody. Councillor McFadden.
For information.
Seconded, Councillor Schumann. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 5.2, we have a letter from Jennifer Moore, the conference chair in the Spark Women's Leadership Conference, a request for sponsorship in 2015. I did check. We didn't sponsor anything in 2014, so just for information.
I'd like to receive for information.
Received for information. Councillor Wilbur, seconded Councillor McFadden. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We have a letter from, email from Dale Campbell, Mile Zero Park Society regarding the update on the relocation of the railway car.
Move to receive it for information.
Received by Councillor Parslow, information, seconded Councillor McFadden. Discussion? Councillor Schumann?
So they're asking for us to move this, so receiving it for information, we're not going to consider that at all then?
My headspace on many things is we can't afford that. We need to put our money into infrastructure.
And so put that.
So I think we should send a letter back saying that we can't. We'd be open to them finding funds to do it.
Thank you. Jim?
Through your worship, it won't disappear on this motion because from the time you begin your budget process until after all the input is received at your first public consultation, we gather all that information and it comes to you for a subsequent decision about whether you're going to change your capital plan or not. So this matter will show up as one of the items that has come from the public, and you'll be making a decision on it in your budget process.
Thank you. Councillor Wilbur?
I just wanted to add to what Councillor Parslow said about writing a letter and asking them to look for funds, but I'm wondering if that letter, we could include them restoring it where it is. It's kind of a nice piece that enhances our art gallery and the traffic circle, so I'm wondering if they've looked at actually restoring it where it sits now.
Thank you. Further comments? Councillor Rogers?
Yeah, I just agree with Councillor Wilbur, because that was one of the notes that I had is from the presentation that I'd seen that they put a roof over it, and I was thinking, well, that would be a great spot, put a roof over it, and let's watch the citizens can watch it get redone where it's at.
Thank you. So,
Just,
Councillor Parslow?
I just asked council to refresh their memories of the 10-year strategic plan of the Mile Zero Park Society, and that this piece is supposed to be part of the railway display that they're developing there. So I can tell you they won't be doing anything by the art gallery.
Thank you.
They're working hard on this railway display.
Thank you. Further comments? Motion is to receive for information. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So we're done through delegations.
We have
5-4.
Connie, a letter from
Oh, I'm sorry. Blew by right by 5-4. So we have our letter from Connie Patterson, President of the Dawson Creek Exhibition Association. Councillor Schumann?
So I need some help with refreshing my memory on what we sponsor. I know we sponsor fireworks, but I looked through that whole package there and I couldn't find the amount for fireworks sponsorship.
Yeah, I did some inquiries and I think it was $10,000 is the approximate number we sponsor as part of this request for the fireworks.
Right. So I would move that we continue to support through sponsoring the fireworks for one night.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Wilbur. Jim?
Yeah, so that's automatic in your fee-for-service policy at the moment.
Okay.
That money. I would be remiss if I did not mention the amount of money the taxpayers spend on the facility year-round, and I don't actually know what that number is, but it would be over $100,000 that would. Pardon me?
115 was the 2015.
So you have budgeted to spend $115,000 down there maintaining that facility and preparing it for the event, and that. Without that support, the event couldn't go forward.
Yeah. And then through the event itself, we have our equipment down there, and we have some of our staff that are helping in preparation time for the event. So, thank you, Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, I'm gonna sound like a broken record. We're already citizens are already putting enough money towards it. Do we really need to start throwing another $10,000 at it for fireworks? And just because we've done it in the past does not mean, pardon me?
We're not starting, we've always done it. And
We,
yeah,
just because we've done it in the past, I don't think that jury, because we're still talking about the fiscal gap. Do we? Excuse me, Ms. Chairman.
So, can we'll have one at a time,
sorry.
please.
I apologize.
So I just think is it's, I know it's $10,000 and people say, well, that's nothing, but you know, it's this 10,000 here, 10,000 there, and it's just starting to add up. And I just think if it wouldn't be prudent if I didn't say it, because I believe we all talked about trying to deal with it.
Thank you. Further comments, Councillor Wilbur?
Is the amount that we heard from the CFO, does that include that $10,000, the 115?
Yeah.
So it's included in the
Yeah.
115 that we,
Because it is in the fee-for-service policy, so at the moment, that isn't a policy that any of you have identified you would like to review, so one or more of you might want to give that information to Brenda, because you might want to review that fee-for-service in context with all the others. I know that during our initial budget discussion, for instance, the fee-for-service for Mile Zero Cruisers, which is exactly the same amount, came up. So that might be something you wish to look at. It probably would not affect this year's budget, but it might be something on a going forward basis.
Thank you.
so then we could just receive this for information?
Yeah,
Yeah, because
it's in the
Sorry.
agreement, so,
Just that we had a motion, so we'll change our motion to receive for information.
thank you. Is that okay with the seconder?
Well, the first on the second.
Okay,
I'm
okay. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Item 7.1, we have a report from the Director of Corporate Administration regarding our policy review on our, as a work plan.
I'll make that motion. The
Moved by-
report number 15-030 from the Director of Corporate Administration regarding the policy review work plan be received further that the following deadline of March 9th, whereby council will provide their list of policies for review, and further that staff be directed to provide a policy meeting schedule for council's consideration on March 16th.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Schumann. Discussion. So I think it's a great opportunity to kind of for all of us to have a look at that, review that policy manual, and be able to hive off some of those things, or have a look at some of those things that we think may need a review in terms of the future. So, thank you. Any further questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 7.2, we have a report from the Chief Financial Officer regarding requests for proposals for the airport ACAP projects. Councillor McFadden.
I'd move the report number 15-031 from the CFO regarding request for proposal for airport ACAP projects be received, further that staff be authorized to award the contracts as follows. All excluding taxes, 2015-021 airport subsurface drainage rehab to Wedler Engineering, $59,305, and report number 2015-022 airport concrete aprons to Wedler Engineering, $51,295, and 2015-02-3 airport culvert project Matrix Solutions, $55,625.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Schumann. Discussion. Councillor Parslow.
Yeah, obviously, if we're successful, the funding for the actual capital work will come from federal funds.
Yeah.
The engineering work that's entailed in the first part, that's also federally funded? Yeah. Let's making sure that it's
Jim?
funded.
The proposal here is it's funded from the airport reserve, is that not correct?
Yeah, through your worship, it would be funded through the airport reserve initially. Once the application went to ACAP, if the ACAP project was approved, they would refund us the money.
It's qualifying under the
Yeah,
grants.
if our application was not successful, we have to pay.
We eat it.
You eat the engineering work.
Yes. The only thing I'll have to say about that is by doing this work, you will find out your condition reports, which is useful in its own.
Yes.
Thank you. Further questions? Are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed?
I'm
Carried.
Sorry, I'm just playing days with my friend over there.
Report number 7, item 7.3, we have report number 15033 from the Chief Financial Officer in regards to the 2014 Climate Action Survey. Councillor Schumann?
I move report number 15033 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding the Climate Action Survey be received and approved as presented. Further, that staff proceed with securing a carbon reduction offset service agreement so that the city can maintain its carbon neutral status in accordance with the 2014 provincial regulations.
Thank you. Second to Councillor Wilbur. Discussion?
Oh, I'm good.
You ready for the question? Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, I have
I just got it back.
quite a few questions. I don't know who to, well, obviously direct it through Jim. This report was put together by who?
I believe by Ms. Wolf.
So, through your worship, I do the cover report, which
Yeah.
addresses the financial, and then the survey itself is done by the sustainability clerk, and then basically the group sustainability and all those plans are overseen by the director. So,
Yeah.
staff, clerical staff.
That's fine. So I have a number of questions. If you don't ask me which page these are on, I can just look at my notes. First of all, the geothermal energy project. I remember maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3, we had a report presented to us that was about geothermal. And what was the disposition of council at that report? My impression was it was received, and as it was a $70 million project, it was just received, no action.
That's my recollection as well, Your Worship, and it was specific to the possibility of using geothermal for the multiplex.
That's right. So why does that reappear in this document? That's my question. And I do apologize, I can't give you page references. Maybe somebody else can do it. Let's see, energy generation, under the energy generation section.
Well, my understanding of this report is that we are demonstrating to interested parties, basically the province, that we are, a range of activities have taken place since the last report. So that's my understanding.
So I'm referring here, that's fair, absolutely. I'm referring to the actions proposed for 2015. So that's, any comments about that?
I have no comments on the 2015 actions.
Okay, okay.
It might, is it in the 2015 actions?
Yes,
Or in the
actions proposed for,
2014?
no, actions taken in 2014. The report reads out, Shelley, geothermal power plant feasibility study completed in 2013, shared with potential funding partners. 2015, the city will continue to identify opportunities for clean renewable energy projects. This is through energy generation, under the heading there, and cost savings to the taxpayer. Well, we had a study to show that it was just way beyond our there's nothing wrong with geothermal, but it's way beyond. So I just, why are we flogging a dead horse?
Would council prefer that I do not look for opportunities for clean renewable energy projects to reduce GHG and cost savings to the taxpayer? Because if you prefer I don't do that, I won't.
No, that's...
But that has absolutely nothing to do with geothermal.
Yeah.
What we're reporting is that 2014 we received the geothermal. What we're reporting is that 2015 we will continue to look for opportunities.
Yes, well, my wish is that we wouldn't bother because it's a waste of staff time.
To look for renewable energy projects?
No, for generation of energy, yes. That's my opinion.
I have no direction from council to stop looking for renewable energy projects that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions and save money for the taxpayer. If you'd like to issue that direction, we can go with that.
Councillor Wilbur?
I was going to say, does that not again, through you to Jim, fall again under policy? Like we have a policy about looking for these things, finding, do we not have a green policy or something that
We do,
relates to
and
that?
we also have an energy manager who our contract with BC Hydro says he will
Right.
look for these things.
That's
So
right.
we can cancel that contract. I mean, there's all sorts of things we can do. I'm not sure that this report is the opportunity for council to make those decisions, but if you believe it is, issue those directions and on we'll go.
Councillor Rogers?
Yeah, we only got 6 days to get this in, apparently. If I think I'm right on that. And with it is in the policy. I did note that. I've been trying to get my head wrapped around on how all of this works, and I do believe that we have to belong to this in order to get grants and stuff like that. And I believe somebody can help me out here at any point. I believe that city measures the amount of carbon and we have to pay into that. So I believe
Measure might be too strong a phrase, we estimate.
Estimate, okay. So we pay into it $472,000, and then we'll buy offsets, carbon offsets of $98,000. And this all goes back to policy, so I really think that, there's really nothing that we can do with this right at this point anyways, except through our policy later on. And just one other thing, when it talked about purchasing carbon offsets, and in our policy it says that we won't just purchase any carbon offset, we'll purchase the high quality carbon offsets. And I had noted that the higher quality is like reforestation and stuff like that, and I know we had talked about that previously. I'm going off track, but we did talk about our parks and possibly taking them back to a natural state. And so that would go along with the reforestation of our existing parks and stuff like that. Is that an option that I would like to ask staff? Is that one of the options that we're looking for to reduce the amount of money we're spending on credits?
So through your worship, it would actually probably be useful if we reran this workshop. But the workshop many of you attended, our own projects don't qualify. They haven't gone through the vetting process to qualify. And the cost of the vetting process to qualify our own projects is millions of dollars. So there's no business case for doing that. So no, we can't purchase offsets by self-defining our own work as offset quality. We have to go to previously certified offset providers. And you had made a decision, working through a process around high quality, to use the Pacific Carbon Trust. Provincial government shut down the Pacific Carbon Trust, and so Shelley brought you a report suggesting the next best alternative, and that's the provider that we are using now. But we have far less information about the quality of their offset projects than we had about Pacific Carbon Trust. But that is shared in common with all of the offset providers that are currently in the market. There isn't the information about them that there was about Pacific Carbon Trust.
Thank you. Further conversation, further questions? Councillor Parslow, then Councillor Javeka.
Yes, I will not be supporting this because there's many things, actions planned here that I just don't think they have any value. But one question I have is I'm completely puzzled about. Two questions. What is our policy for local food production? It says we have one. I'm not aware that we had a policy for local food production.
Yes, I believe we do.
What does it say?
Well, I don't know. I would have to go to the policy book to find that out.
There's a reason why I wondered, because we had all that, when we had the question around chickens, it seemed to be the whole concept of local food production. This is why it was something that was new. And the other question is, what is transportation demand management?
So, could I just ask what the political question in any of this is?
Well, the political question is simply that when we receive reports like this, then if we approve it, And then something comes along and we wonder, why are we spending money on here? We're told, oh, you approved it in the report that was attached to that thing. So I wanted to understand what I'm approving.
So these are based on policy, so policy is probably the place to start with that. So if you would wish us not to qualify this year, we can hold this back and we can go through the policies. And again, we're asking you to please do the work of identifying the policies you'd like to talk about by March 9th so that we can set a schedule up for that. Policy is how you run administration. So it is correct that we are bringing you a report that is based on policy that does commit to activities based on council's direction. We can't stop the work of the city while council decides whether they're changing anything or not in a general way. But we can certainly stop this report going forward, if that is your wish. We will not qualify then under the rebate program and probably not under Bill Canada, if that's your wish. If this is so mission critical that we need to stop until we can do that, let's do that.
Thank you. Further questions? No. Councillor Javetka?
Just going through the report, scanning it here on the weekend, it's got significant implications, staff implications, which affects the budget. And it affects workload priorities. And, you know, the fact that we've got 6 days is the deadline. It's got to be submitted by the 8th. To me, I think we would be prudent to hold it off until we do a review of the policy. You know, in this climate of trying to come to terms with our spending, this report has a lot of implications regarding staff costs. So I won't be voting in favor of it either.
Thank you. Councillor Schumann?
So through you to Shelley, we don't submit this, and then we are not eligible to get back our CAREP. Is that how it works?
Yeah, through your worship. So basically they have the whole climate action program has these steps that we have to go through. And the reporting at March 8th is one of these steps that we have to go through. So what I hear council saying is that possibly they don't want to be part of the program, or two, they just don't like the actions for 2015. Okay, and I'm just going to take you back in the report. By signing the agreement, the city committed to 3 goals regarding the climate action charter, and that was being carbon neutral. It was measuring and reporting on its community GHG emissions. We've done that. And this is the part of the 3rd, creating a complete, compact, and energy efficient community. So outside of this report and the details in the report, that it sounds like we don't like the details of the report, it comes back to the bigger commitment of creating a complete, compact, and energy efficient community. If you're against that part of the program, then we should probably bring that up and then just get out of the program, because it's one of the key pieces of getting that money back, which is about $100,000. So,
Understanding though that then you don't qualify under Bill Canada.
Right.
This is a requirement
Capital.
of Bill Canada. Understanding also, you've already authorized an operational budget to go to the citizens. There is no extra expenditure in this report over what you've already authorized. You haven't directed any cuts in the operational budget, although you had several motions that failed to do so. So I'm proceeding on the basis of the operational budget because council specifically discussed cuts and turned them down. What is the reason for holding this then?
Thank you. Councillor Rogers?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, it's clear now, and it was clear at the last meeting that that there is a path that is laid out for us already. It's clear to me that regarding the budget, we cannot really do anything regarding the budget until we look at our policy, and our policy has not been reviewed yet. So I just look at it and I go, okay, well, this is the path that previous council had set me on. Whether I can agree with it or not, is another thing, but I think that it's something that we're gonna have to be looking at when we redo our policy, and it'll go all the way back into when we do our 2016 budget. Because I'm pretty sure there's not a whole lot we can do with the 2015 budget because we haven't even looked at our policy yet. From what I'm hearing from staff is that they're recommending that we move forward with the report. And I guess this is something that we'll have to focus on in the future, because if we tell staff that we're not interested in doing this anymore, then we lose our Build Canada funding, which we've applied for and we really need. And then we lose, we'll be losing out on some of the other things that are in our policy that say that we are committed to being carbon neutral. That's another part of the policy we might want to look at later on. So I'll leave it with you guys.
Thank you. Councillor Javeka?
Just a clarification on the budget process here. My understanding is that we haven't approved or haven't provided final approval to the budget. Am I mistaken there?
No, you've approved an operational budget to go to the city, to the citizens for comment.
Yeah, so we're in
Okay, so there's still an opportunity to change that budget.
right up till the end of April.
Yeah, so what we've dealt with so far is just interim information. There have been some motions made, some won, some lost, but there still is an opportunity in the future to either increase or reduce the budget. So my understanding was from Jim's comments that, you know, we've approved the operational budget and we don't have another kick at it. Well, that isn't accurate then.
Well, I think what we're saying is that we've given direction now to administration for the preparation of the budget for the public presentations, the public consultation process, and that continues to move forward over the next 2 months till the end of April. Councillor Parslow?
Yeah. So the application, the Build Now program is the one that we just applied for, is that?
Federal provincial, where we had MP Zimmer and MLA Bernier here.
Okay, well, I can't do anything I don't want to do anything to stop that, so I will, with great reservations about some of the action plans, and I have to, Sarah will have to support.
Thank you. Councillor Wilbur?
I'd just like to call a question, please.
Thank you. Question's been called. I will call that, and in my perspective, certainly I get the opportunity to close this and say we have, and not only we, but previous councils have given direction in terms of setting the policy for decisions that this board and the administration move forward with. I really am concerned about the aspect of having any implications of either the $100,000 that we would receive as a credit in this program, as well as the Build Canada fund. So I'm absolutely supporting us moving this forward. Is it worthwhile for us in terms of the policy? That's why we go through that process. So I encourage everybody to be able to provide that input as requested by administration to give that direction, and that's what it's about. So thank you. Question's been called. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Item 7.4, we have a report number 15029 from the Director of Development Services regarding an update on the projects and partnerships with Northern Environmental Action Team.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councillor Wilbur, seconded. Councillor Schumann, discussion? Councillor Wilbur, then Councillor Javeka.
This is just really, I know from experience with the city cleanup and Adopt a Block and other programs that we have, this is just a really great relationship for the city, and it is a great opportunity to provide education to our youth that are coming forward and making them aware, and so I support this 100%.
Thank you. Councillor Javeka.
There is no estimate of cost here to the city. I was just wondering if there's any idea of what budget requirements are going to be required for this initiative.
Thank you.
Through your worship, $9,227, and it's all funded out of the water consulting and watershed steward budget.
Thank you. Councillor Schumann.
And I'd just like to point out that's under item 4 under financial, that number there.
Thank you. Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, The watershed steward, who funds that?
We do, that's the budget line it's coming out of?
Yeah, okay. I had noticed the other day too, that this is also in our policy as well. So I don't know if there's any changing that. The only thing that I looked at it and I went, I looked at some of the programs and there was a couple of them that I wasn't supportive of, and there was a couple of them that I were supportive of, and there's a couple that I was sitting on the sidelines.
It's really great to get that review of those policies, so you get a little bit of a history of understanding how the policy arrived at, why it evolved, why it sits today, and I think it's a great discussion.
May wish to make to it.
Yeah. Councillor Javeco?
So is all of the workload done by councillors, or is there some staff here? Does it take an FTE or half an FTE?
Sorry for
this project.
Oh, I have to refer that over to administration.
So in the past, council's been asked to volunteer their time at some of these events, and particularly Councillor Schumann and Wilbur have been vibrant in doing so, and Councillor McFadden goes to the booth but then tends to wander off.
He's networking.
But there is staff, and the staff is the watershed steward and the sustainability clerk.
Thank you. Shelley?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment as well that the Peace River Regional District partners with us on the watershed program for $40,000. And this is the final year, 3-year agreement. Whether council wants to renew that or not, that's...
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? No more wandering off. Are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Report number 7.5, report from the Director of Infrastructure regarding the Calvin Kirk Centre for the Arts parking. We had a request to have a kind of look at this, and we looked at the angle parking and some of the handicap parking. So we have that report available. Jim, do you want to speak to it first before?
So I have Sean here if you have specific questions, but the concept here is to create additional spaces by taking advantage of the width of 104th there. So 104th can be reconfigured for angle parking, which allows you to get more vehicles in. There is also the intent to leave lengthy handicap spot there from actually a loading and handicapped area, basically from the daycare entry all the way past to the end of the property, basically. So this would increase the number of stalls that are available on street. It would add an extra handicapped stall, and there is, of course, still the parking across the street at the city lot.
Thank you. Councillor Wilbur? Yeah, so Councillor Wilbur's making that motion?
Yep. Do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So that report number 15-027 from the Director of Infrastructure regarding the Calvin Crook Centre for the Arts parking be received. Further, that council direct staff to implement angled parking on the south side of 104th Avenue between 10th Street and 11th Street, and designate an additional handicap able parking stall on the southwest corner of 104th Avenue and 110th Street.
Thank you. Second to Councillor Schumann. Discussion, Councillor Wilbur?
One thing that came to mind with the daycare being there, I'm wondering if it wouldn't be feasible to have a 2 or 3 stall section right in front of the daycare that is no parking, because there's step up and ride and school buses drop children off after school to the daycare. So I kind of wonder about, the kids running between parked cars and when they're unloading and offloading on those buses. So I'm just wondering if that's something feasible we could do, just have a no parking area in front of the daycare for drop-offs.
So, Sean,
through your worship, the way it was proposed is there is a couple widths there, and it will be called a drop-off zone.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just one for clarity.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Rogers?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we couldn't have, I see we got the drop-off zone at the one end of the building by the daycare, but could we have around by the front of the building, you have that other handicap stall? Is there any way we could take a couple of the spots that are on the corner there, beside the handicap, that would be just like a 15-minute drop-off zone for those mothers with the small babies, or the fathers with the babies in the car that are moving to pick up? So maybe the first 2 spots on either side of the handicap spot just be a 15-minute kind of loading and unloading area for those folks.
Through to administration?
Certainly could if you wished.
It's your pleasure.
Can we add that to an amendment?
Sure.
Yeah.
Seconded?
I'll second.
Councillor Wilbur?
Yep.
Okay. Is that clear? Got it? Any further discussion on the amendment? We had a couple 15-minute drop-off zones. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And on the main motion, ready for the question?
Yep.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Bylaws, 8.1, Animal Control Bylaw Amendment under report number 15025.
I'll make the motion, but it's not loading.
It's loading. It's taking
Slow.
time.
Moved by Councillor Wilbur, seconded by Councillor Parslow. Councillor Schumann?
So reading through this, I think the only thing that jumped out at me was restricting the hens and bees to just RS1. How did we come to that? Like, to me, it seems like there's just a teeny little. I keep being reminded by certain people that there's a very small portion of the community that is RS1, and that restricting it away from RS2 would essentially say that you couldn't
me?
have the hens and the bees in most of the city. So,
Jim?
I'll kick that over to Brenda.
Yeah, through your worship, the intent, I had a discussion with the bylaw enforcement officer, and his concern was those backyards that didn't have a fence dividing the two backyards. That was the reasoning to just try RS1 for the time being, but it's up to you if you'd rather have it in RS2.
Councillor Schumann?
yeah, I would rather that we just allow it in RS2. I mean, that negates my neighborhood. It negates most everybody's neighborhoods by saying not have it in RS2. I know there are some challenges in some of the RS2 blocks or certain areas, but for me, I think it really negates most of the community by saying not have it in RS2. So I would like it to be RS1 and RS2.
Okay, so you're making that by way of a change. Are you okay with that for
Yeah,
the
I'm
mover
fine
and the
with that,
seconder? Thank you. Councillor Parslow, you had a question?
No, I'm
Okay. Further, Councillor Rogers?
Okay, I'm playing catch up here. I just got everything shown here. So what we're doing here with this, we're getting chickens and
Hens.
bees and cats. All three.
I don't think. Yes?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes.
It's updating the bylaw.
We're just updating the bylaw. So this still has to go out to public.
Yes?
Okay. I was just wondering because like the chickens and the bees is kind of new to me being on council and everything else. Is council supportive of the chickens and the bees?
They have been so far.
I'm just curious.
Agriculture policy.
Is everybody aware that this will pretty much open the door for pigs and goats and everything else?
Council gets to decide that.
No, not necessarily.
Yeah, council gets to make those decisions.
Yeah, I was just wondering because I had some people talking to me about they wanted their pigs, and then some lady in Nanaimo was fighting with the city of Nanaimo because she wants to have goats, and I just.
It's council sets the bylaw.
All right. Okay. I was just
Thank
wondering.
you. Further questions? Further comments?
I have.
Ready for the question?
Yep.
All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. And zoning amendment bylaw 4242 for consideration of rereading, second reading as amended.
Oh, we're just finishing that off.
I'm sorry, where are you, Worship?
What's that?
8-2?
Was that all in the same motion?
Yeah.
All right.
One motion should be
So
sufficient.
the zoning amendment bylaw will not be changed. It
All right.
will remain as it
So
is.
stays as RS2?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Second reading.
So, Mayor's business, I want to get into a couple of items. I was in Victoria 2 weeks ago at the invitation of the government to attend a couple of different events, and one was the provincial budget, and along with a number of meetings that I attended with MLA Bernier, and in particular meeting with the staff in regards to our Bill Canada application to make sure that we get the attention to that with Minister of Transportation Stone, as well as supporting a couple of messages with Emily Bernier with respect to major projects in our community, such as our hospital and that acute care facility, and the planning that Northern Health have been undergoing, and along with the Northern Lights College and that Trades Training Center building. And also had a great meeting with Minister Oakes in regards to and around the whole aspect of the fair share and discussions around that. On this tomorrow, Tuesday, we have the BC Lions in partnership with the Encana sponsor an event and a program called Be More Than a Bystander, and it's a violence against women that's supported in messaging by the BC Lions, and they travel around the province and do a great job of it. And so they're going to be here tomorrow afternoon at the Calvin Kirk Centre, 4 o'clock, and they do a bit of a overview of the program with a couple of BC Lions players, and then a mix and mingle, completely sponsored by Encana, and they look after it all. So I just wanted to give it a little bit of profile for us, if we can be there and support it. What a great message for our community. I've been part of a committee over the last year. I got invited to attend a provincial committee with the Ministry of Transportation and different organizations on safer roads and road safety throughout the province, and they asked me to couple of the people that are steering it and navigating it on behalf of the province, or people that were in my past work life with ICBC, asked if I'd sit on it because they really thought it was beneficial to have somebody from a small community involved in it. So I've been involved in that over the last 8 months probably, and we had a meeting last week. They're doing a survey of all communities across the province that they're putting together to talk about how we, all of us, engage the issue and topic of planning for road safety initiatives within our province. We heard a great presentation today, I think, from the RBS, the transportation, in terms of road safety. And so it's been very helpful for me in terms of being able to provide some input in terms of some of the aspects of road safety planning that we all face in a community, and how important it is, and understanding that. So they're working together with the Ministry of Transportation. And so I just wanted to give council, I know I talked about it last year, but I haven't, just one of those things I meet on a monthly basis with them. Last week, Thursday, was the Peace River Regional District Board meeting. Committee of the Whole meeting, we dealt with the Peace River Regional District budget. And again, for us to have that, sometimes the impacts of that regional district budgeting process and the allocation of funding that each and every one of us within the regional district, both the municipalities and the electoral area directors, contribute to that budget in terms of the revenues for the spend that the regional district take place on behalf of services and functions that they perform in the region, and the allocation then that it means for each one of us. And Councillor Rogers, I think, has raised the point a couple of times when people are asked how much is your tax bill, what's your tax bill on an annual basis as a resident, and most people say, oh, it's $2,000 or $2,500 or $3,000, and how much of that gets hived up in between what actually comes to the municipality for our services and the functions we perform, how much of it goes to the regional district in terms of the functions that we share on behalf of our electoral area directors, and then how much of it goes to the school district. And I specifically and purposely looked at my 2014 allocation, and I'll just give you some rough numbers, and at about $2,700, about 16, not even that, probably 14 was municipal, about 400 or 500 was regional district, and then about 1,000 was, so it was about $3,000, I guess, and about 1,000 was school district. So it was amazing to me when you start to look at the allocation of the budget and the revenues that come. And the purpose to me today was about the whole aspect of the Peace River Regional District and the budget and the impacts to our community in terms of the services and components of the budget and the revenues that our citizens pay in relation to some of those functions that are performed. I think it's worthwhile for us to take a little bit more proactive view with our electoral area representatives, along with Chetwynd, Tumbler Ridge, and Poo-Scoopy, as it relates to shared services and shared functions, and having a common discussion about that on behalf of all of us. So as a result of that, I did have a meeting a week ago, and I called in and asked and had a meeting with the mayors of the South Peace communities along with the electoral area directors to start that conversation, because I think it's beneficial to all of us to have a more cohesive view of how we see that funding from the Peace River Regional District. So we had 3 or 4 items today from our delegations that I want to bring forward. First one up, we had BC Transit, and they came and give us a bit of an overview of the processes and funding and allocation and all of that. And so I just want to pass it to Jim in terms of there's a annual review function now that takes place, and we should be, or are we due for, and should we engage in?
Through your worship, you are due for one for 2016, but you have to ask for it. So.
Okay. Councillor Schumann?
I move that we ask for a review in 2016.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor McFadden. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next up, we had Mr. Stewart from Western Canadian Properties give us a presentation on a couple of requests for their development. One in regards to a temporary settlement pond, and 2, the issue of the cul-de-sac for the fire truck and turning radius as originally planned in the proposal, and requesting a variance. Councillor Wilbur?
I think what I would like to see is a report back from staff on pros and cons, and what, if this will work, and if not, or if it won't, or to me, I need more information on the whole thing. So I'd like to make a motion that we ask staff to bring us back a report on the information provided, including the accessibility. The fire department was mentioned about being able to access that with their emergency vehicles, so I'd like that included as well.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Parslow. Discussion? Yeah, I think, and so administration have raised the issue for us in terms of, as they're working through it, in terms of the legalities for us, and even making some changes to the OCP, and so I think it's a prudent move for us. Councillor Rogers?
Yeah, I just like to, because like I'd mentioned, I was talking to Trent on the way in, and Mr. Stewart said that he would be open to Mr. Lindbergh actually building this retention pond and then him paying the latecomer fees or the development cost charges or whatever it is. I'd like to have an idea what those charges would be for any particular lot tying into that retention pond, and give Mr. Lindbergh that information for when, if he's really serious about doing that, that would be excellent, because that takes the pressure off and allows everybody to carry on and develop and everything else.
Thank you. Councillor Wilbur?
I understand where Mr. Rogers is going with that, but I don't think it's up to us to get 2 proponents together to come up with a business plan. If they wish to do that, or Mr. Lindbergh wishes to do that, then he knows who to approach, so he should approach them. But as far as the presentation that came to council, I would just like staff to bring back a report on the feasibility and legalities and all of that kind of stuff of this, because I do understand that some of the land that surrounds this development is still in the ALR. So we don't want to hold up everyone else developing over someone not having land removed yet. So that's why I would like that report brought back.
Thank you. Councillor Javecka?
I think what Mark's suggesting there, I think, is quite important, and I think the city should play a role. The way I see it, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but the city has given Trent Lindbergh the veto power for developing that area. If he holds out for prices that aren't acceptable, he basically vetoes development. That's the position that the city has put him in. The city created that problem. To me, it's a problem. So I think that the city should be instrumental in looking for solutions. And I think that this solution that Mark is talking about is one that just may work.
Yeah, and so I think in the report from administration, that will cover off that information in terms of what and how the development will occur.
Well, we can, I wouldn't suggest that you pick an individual councillor to be the liaison between Mr. Lindbergh and Development Services Department. I think they should make that outreach themselves, rather than through Councillor Rogers. I don't think that's an appropriate role for a councillor, not least of which because you may later have to make a decision on something even reasonable. So I think it should be staff that do the conversations with Mr. Lindbergh. But I'll just remind council that prior to Councillor Javakov's seating on council, you specifically considered whether you had the role in this or not, and my current direction from council, it is not your role to intervene. We're operating off the current direction of council.
That's the motion. Thank you. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. We had a request from Aloha Properties, Jonathan Simmons and his partner in regards to height variance. Councillor Parslow?
I would like a report from staff on this.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Wilbur. Discussion? Councillor Wilbur?
One thing that just come to mind, and maybe it's a silly question, but does this property not fall within the flight path of our airport? Will that height affect that?
Think of the college.
Through your worship,
I'm just-
well, technically most of our community falls within the flight path, but the way the federal regulation works, they are so remote from it that there is virtually no height restriction there. We do not have the full development permit and development variance permit applications yet, but we'll work through that as staff. We'll bring you back a report on what they're requesting, because it's actually two things. There is the variance, but there is also the main development permit, which is required in multiple density. So the project can't proceed without at least a development permit, and it's unknown whether it could proceed without the height variance. That's conversations we still have to hold with the developer.
Thank you. Councillor Schumann, then
So,
Councillor Rogers.
Through you to staff. So Jim, they were just here to chat us up, to show us, they weren't actually asking us to,
No, I believe they were
No,
asking
they
you
were-
to proceed.
they
without
wanted
a
us to
staff report.
proceed.
to like just
You could take-
jump past the development.
You
and
could
the-
take the position that development permits are a totally political decision and you don't need staff advice on them, you just need your feeling for what's best for the community. That would not be best practice.
No.
Thank you. Councillor Rogers?
Yes, we do need staff advice regarding the height restriction. I would like to also try and find out how many other variances have we given, has council given, for other projects in the city limits?
Jim?
I don't know how long it would take to research that. You have granted many and you have turned some down. So the last couple I can recall you turning down were either last year or the year before. One was a second story on a garage, and Mr. Loke had asked for that. The other was an oversized welding shop in Willowbrook. You turned both of those down. On the other hand, you have, for instance, last year granted a variance for Mr. Inkster on lot siting. So variance, the rule of law in variance applications is that each one must be considered on the basis of the individual circumstances, having regard to all the factors that might be important to you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilbur?
Nope, sorry.
Sorry. Councillor Javakov?
Just one variance that I specifically remember from years ago was an apartment down by the high school. The area was zoned, I guess, for a 3-story, and we approved a 4-story apartment.
Thank you. Councillor Rogers?
This kind of might have to get looked at later on by staff, I think, because according to the BC Building Code, I believe years ago, it was only you were only allowed a 3-story wood frame structure. I believe with the under the new regulations, or the newest or latest, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe they're now allowing 4-story wood frame structures. And from what I've heard is there's going to be in the future 6-story wood frame structures that will be approved and stuff like that. So I don't know if we want to look at part of our OCP on the height regulations, etc., as we move forward in the future, or whether or not we just keep granting variances and stuff like that.
Jim?
Yeah, through your worship, in the past, what you've looked at in terms of height restriction is not the material, because you can also build from steel and concrete for an apartment building. You've looked at the issue of its compatibility with the neighbors. That's why you have a public process on this. You'll be getting, the neighbors will have an opportunity to comment on whatever you decide seems to you to be appropriate. It's normally, that height restriction hasn't actually had to do with construction material, it's had to do with neighborhood impact.
Thank you. Councillor Schumann?
Okay, so the motion is that we're gonna get a report from staff?
Yes.
Because wouldn't we see a report from staff or something with the development permit and then with the variance request? Like,
Yeah,
are we asking for like extra here?
No, this is the normal process. You're just confirming, I think, to the delegation that you're going to follow the normal process.
Okay, good. So we don't need any special report, just the normal ones then? Okay, thanks.
For me, what these two have done today is, I think, caused me to, I think we need to reflect on our procedural bylaw in terms of we've got a pretty wide open process in terms of what we allow for delegations, and with the pressures of development, the pressures of time and all of that, you have now the developers looking to be able to try to get to council to get a decision, and we need to ensure that we have, in my view, we need to have administration guiding the information that council bases their decisions on, and so to me that we'll look at that in how we move it forward. So thank you. Any further questions? We're going to ask staff for a report on the height restriction variance. Ready for the question? Yeah. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. And our final one, we had Wendy and Aaron from the SPCA in regards to council going with the consideration of a CAT.
Didn't we already approve that?
We did that, right? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Ooh,
Good.
We're ahead.
Thank you. Any questions for Mayor's business? Strategic priorities. We had the report from our strategic planning session, the draft report for consideration. It's outlined the prioritization, I think, of the discussion that we had as council. What it didn't do is it didn't bring it forward with the focus for us in terms of those key strategic objectives and priorities. And so I think what we need to do, sorry? Brenda?
Just one item that was missed, the consent calendar.
Oh.
I'll move it.
Move consent calendar, seconded Councillor Wilbur. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Sorry. And so now we need to, I think, validate the discussions that we had from strategic priorities, that planning session, in terms of our fiscal gap, that financial component, the infrastructure needs, quality of life, the employees, and what was the fifth? Sorry, I don't have the report in front of me.
I don't have it up.
Okay.
Organizational capacity.
That is
capacity, the people. And so now I think what we need to do is then give staff and Jim direction to move forward with a plan of how we move that forward in those strategic priorities for us with those alignments, and endorse that direction that we have adopted. Councillor McFadden?
So moved.
Seconded, Councillor Schumann. Discussion? Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, I can't endorse that. Some of the language used in the report does not reflect my tally of people's opinion. So I was thinking that we should discuss it at the next COW meeting, town meeting, in depth. So that's where I stand on it.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion, comments? Jim?
So through your worship, if this accurately reflects your common understanding of what went on at the strategic planning, and you picked between option 1 or option 2 for the vision statement, I could write you a plan reflecting this. If there are parts of this that one or more of you don't believe accurately captures the conversation, I believe Councillor Parslow's suggestion is a very necessary step before I could write you a plan.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Javekov?
I think that we should take that step.
Okay. Further comments? So
are we deferring it?
So do you want to make the motion we defer until we have that next committee of the whole and have that conversation?
You
Well,
could,
I did consider that, but, you know, I think that motion should only be used rarely because it cuts off debate, doesn't it? I mean,
which you've had now, so maybe you want to proceed to the deferral motion?
yeah, okay. That's sorry, good comment.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor Rogers?
Okay, hold on a second. What the heck's going on? All I seen was the fiscal gap was the number one priority. Who cares about the rest of it?
Well, I think the detail in terms of having some, before we give Jim the nod, as Councillor Parslow's comment,
Yeah.
to write the details in the plan for the 2015 strategic plan and the prioritization process. Councillor Parslow thinks we should have some conversation around that report before we provide that direction to administration, which
Yeah.
I'm good with. I
I
want to
do
move
agree
it
with
forward.
that, yeah.
So,
I agree with
Yeah.
I agree with that.
so motion to defer.
Absolutely.
Councillor Parslow, seconded. Councillor Wilbur.
To the next.
All in favor? Thank you.
And that's deferred to the next
To the
town
next meeting.
right?
Right, which
Yeah.
is on the 16th, I believe.
Committee of the whole.
Yeah, and then you can flesh that out. Of course, you can't make any decisions there, but whatever your outcomes are, I can get busy working on an actual plan.
Thank you. Question and answer period?
No one has
Nothing?
signed up.
Media question? Johnny, Natalie?
I had a handful. So on the consent calendar, the industrial development between 8th and 15th there, I was wondering if you could explain what the issues were with CN and the rezoning. This was under either the, from the in-camera or the closed meetings, was under items previously released from a closed meeting.
He's talking about the decision not to proceed with the charrette.
Oh, okay, sure, sorry. And so what was the question?
Can you explain what the issues were with zoning and CN?
So the issues that we had originally anticipated were, part of it was council didn't feel they had appropriate information and understanding what was going to be the proposed use of the property in terms of, and what was going to be developed there. We've had subsequent conversations with CN, which provided much more clarity around what they're going to be using and how it's going to be used. And so council's decided that we're not going to proceed with the charrette process in the public to have that conversation.
And so are you not proceeding with the rezoning then? You're allowing it to stay?
Yeah, so it'll stay in its current zoning and current usage.
Was it rezoned previously to give council more control over the uses there, or was that?
No, we wanted to consider, council wanted to put the charrettes in place to understand what was planned to be developed and what uses we felt would be appropriate there. Now that we have more clarity in terms of the understanding of that, we're not going to proceed with restricting the usage and or changing the zoning.
Do you have did the city get a development permit for what was proposed?
No, not yet.
So you said that there was more clarity over what that land would be used for, or is that just based on?
From CN, in terms of how they would be developing the siding and the use of the railway siding. But we still haven't had anything from a proponent at all.
Okay, and this, just to be clear, this is what was referred to in some circles as the frac sand.
That's right, yeah.
So who owns that land? Is it the proponent who?
CN,
CN owns it?
yeah.
Okay. And so, under the way it's currently zoned, would a so-called frac sand offloading storage facility be permitted?
Yes.
Okay, so if a proponent wanted to move forward with that, they haven't submitted development?
No, we haven't had any development permit submitted, only we've had the conversations with CN in terms of what they're doing as for a siding there.
Okay, I think I understand that. I had another one from the minutes, the in-camera meetings. I just wondered what the Northeast BC Mayor's Shale Gas Partnership is.
So that was the Northeast BC Resource Coalition?
That's
the Mayor's Coalition that we were a part of with the Northeast BC communities, Fort St. John Taylor, Northern Rockies, and we removed ourselves from it in January.
You just called it something
So
different.
it was just referred to as something different.
It had many iterations of a name.
Yeah.
We're not having another
No.
clunker.
No.
Okay. I might follow up. I'm sort of confused by what exactly. I'll just read that section again and let you know if I.
All right. Thank you. Natalie, anything?
Yeah, if I could just speak with yourself, well, Wendy and Councillor Rogers after.
Sure. We'll be recessing to move into our closed. Thank you, everybody.
So let's try to keep that to 10 minutes because we need to get.
Yeah, we got to be out of here and